This is Rappler's special coverage of the 2022 national elections. #WeDecide, Atin ang Pilipinas. Today we bring you live the last leg, the last hurrah, the meeting the Avance of the candidates for President and Vice President.
Kasama ng Leonie de Guzman.
Kaya mo BBM! Running!
Tutuloy natin ang laban. Magandang simula ito.
Boom siren! Boom siren!
Number 2 sa balota.
Pilipinas! God work!
Big! Lakson!
Manny Pacquiao!
Joining us today is veteran journalist and Rappler's head of regions in Verona, Rappler reporter Sofia Toma Cruz. Joining us virtually later will be De La Salle University Professor Julio Tehanqui, and of course our reporters covering the presidential candidates on the campaign trail will also be joining us. Presidential candidate Ping Lacson held his meeting the Avance in Cavite last Friday, May 6. Rappler reporter Rambo Talabong tells us about the challenges of Lacson's campaign in this report.
Iiwanan man sa mga survey at iniwan man ng kanyang partido, tinapos pa rin ni Senator Panfilo Lacson ang kanyang kampanya para sa pagkapangulo. Ngayong 6 ng Mayo, dito sa Carmona, Cavite, kanyang isinagawa ang kanyang meeting de Avance. Nagsimula ang meeting de Avance ni Lacson pagkalubog ng araw, kasama ang kanyang pambato sa pagka-vice-presidente na si Vicente Soto III. Malayo sa kanilang regular na town hall ang kanilang MDA. Ang karaniwang town hall nila, mataas na ang 3,000 ang dadalo at makikipag-usap sa kanila. Sa MDA, umabot sa 50,000 ang dumating ayon sa bilang ng mga nasiwa ng programa. Nanggaling sa Cavite at sa mga karating probinsya ang pumunta.
Puro sila salita, dapat may gawa. Eto, hindi siya nangangako pero kaya niyang tuparin yun.
Ma-witness namin po at laman din namin kung ang pinaparating sa amin ng magiging presidente po namin.
Talagang mahusay, talaga may maasahan, tsaka makatao.
Sa Verdant Square, ang humarap sa mga botante, mga musikero,
Ating mga bayani.
mga makata,
At eto pa, Jose. Ano pa?
mga komedyante, at mga artista. Tulad ng sa ibang programa sa kampanya, karamihan sa mga sikat na dumating ay mga kasamahan ni Soto sa Itbulaga. May mga artista ring unang pagkakataong sumama sa kanilang kampanya. Sa engganyo ng mga artista, nakinig ang mga tao sa mga pambato sa pagkasenador ni Lacson at Soto. Bukod sa mga regular na pumunta tulad ni Dr. Minggita Padilla, dating Agriculture Secretary Manny Piñol at dating PNP Chief na si Guillermo Eleazar, nagpakita ang mga dating senador na sina JV Ejercito at Gringo Honasan.
Hi, fans!
Si Vic Soto ang nagpakilala kay Tito Soto na siya namang nagbigay ng seryosong talumpati. Aniya, naghihirap ang Pilipinas at sila lamang ng kanyang katambal ang makakapag-ahon sa bansa mula rito.
Kami po ni Senator Lacson, kapag kami pinalat sa tulong ng Panginoon Diyos at sa tulong ninyo, kami pinalat na mamuno ng ating bansa. Makakaasa po kayo, kami hindi magpa-practice. Hindi namin pagpa-practicean. Hindi kami mga kapa. Alam namin ang gagawin upang maiangat ang bawat Pilipino.
At sa huli, nagtalumpati na si Lacson. Nagpasalamat siya sa kanyang mga kababayan at tumawag ng isang himagsikan. Pero hindi sa pamamagitan ng mga baril o sandata, kundi ng papel at tinta.
Inaanyayahan ko po kayo na maglunsad tayo ng isang revolusyon. Hindi po revolusyon na katulad na pinaglaban ng ating mga ninuno, ng ating mga bayani. Ito po ay isang tahimik na revolusyon na kung saan ang ating gamit ay ang ating mga panulat upang i-shade sa balota ang mga pangalan ng mga dapat at karapat-dapat na mamuno sa ating bansa.
Ito ay isang panawagan para sa kanyang tinatawag na silent majority na siya ay iboto. Kung meron man ito, kailangan talaga ito ng mga kandidato. Sa huling Pulse Asia survey na isinagawa noong Abril, 2% lamang ang nagsabi na pipiliin nila si Lacson. Si Soto naman, pumapangalawa lamang sa nasabing survey.
Ilang araw na lamang eleksyon na. Marahil tama nga ang sigaw ng kampanya ni Senator Panfilo Lacson na siya ay matapang, napag-iwanan at nagipit man, hindi siya umatras hanggang huli. Ramo Talabong, Rappler, Cavite.
Salamat, Rambo. With us now is Miriam Grace Go, the editor who oversees the coverage of Senator Panfilo Lacson. Gigi, tell us about Senator Lacson and Senator Tito Soto's Ambisyon 2022 kasi tumakbo na dati si Senator Lacson for president, di ba? Anong pinagkaiba ng 2022 ron at bakit nga ba siya tumatakbo ulit?
Bakit siya tumatakbo? I think it's the parang last hurrah ng kanilang generation. You will notice na silang dalawa ni Senator Soto yung pinakamatanda sa kanilang races. Actually, yung kanilang campaign strategies, si Ronnie Puno, no? Isa din sa mga parang nasa old generation ng mga nagpapatakbo ng kampanya. It's really, yun yung very distinct sa kanila. Parang they are from the same generation na parang nag-a-assert pa ng kanilang influence sa bagong klase ng pangangampanya at eleksyon. And yung difference naman, yung pagkakapareho ng pagtakbo niya 2004 and 2022, nakikita ko parang it's frustration doon sa nakaupo na administrasyon. Si Gloria, tinitira niya dati noong 2004, sinasabi niya very corrupt. Ito naman kay Duterte, kitang-kita mo, tinira niya din yung incompetence sa corruption ng administration. So it's parang very consistent na di ba meron siyang Mr. Clean Image, anti-corruption, he wants things and governance in order, na every time it seems that the administration is run sa opposite direction noong gusto niyang klase ng governance, tatakbo siya. Another thing is, it may not be a factor in his decision or he may not be aware na may ganito, pero pansinin niyo din that in 2004 and 2022, mayroong presidential candidate na babae. So parang meron ba siyang thinking or baka yung iba din, siya lang kasing paulit-ulit na tumatakbo among the presidential candidates now. Parang may thinking ba siya na ang governance ay dapat pang lalaki? Because you have to remember that in 2016, when there was another female running for president, si Grace po, who actually initially considered running for president. But later, he decided to run for senator na lang.
You mentioned earlier, Inday, di ba, na may parallels kahit papano din, yung towards the end of the 2004 run and now the 2022 run.
That's true, no? Gigi said na he's criticized Gloria Arroyo and now he's criticized Duterte. But sa interim na yun, no? And he was also not just kay Gloria, no? He was the Director General of the Philippine National Police under Erap Estrada. He's known as a man of patience. He will be loyal to the Chief Executive until the end, when he doesn't break away, but then he starts speaking out about what's done. But in the interim, systems person talaga si Lacson.
Right. Gigi, si Senator Lacson, Senator Soto, they're exiting the Senate as well after this, no? What kind of Senate is going, ano maging composition ng Senate after May 9, 2022?
If you will consider the most recent surveys, it's that it will be a Senate, barely an opposition. Pangalawa, obviously, it's going to be a family affair again in the Senate kasi merong papasok na at least 4 or 5 na may mga immediate family members na nakaupo ngayon. So mag-overlap yung kanilang terms. Parang sabi nga ni Sofia, no, mangyayari parang 1/3 of the 24-person Senate will be, parang yung members will be coming from just 4 families.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, yeah, if you will also look yung mga mga nasa Magic 12 ng surveys, it seems madadagdagan tayo ng mga performers by profession who will not necessarily have the qualifications to be performers as senators. So yung mga Lito Lapid mo, yung mga Bong Revilla mo, madadagdagan ng mga Robin Padilla, madadagdagan ulit ng mga Jinggoy Estrada, ganun.
Sophia, nabanggit nga ni Gigi, no, you've been tracking the Senate race kasi for better or worse, it's a little harder to track the Senate race when you have presidential candidates running. Could you expound on what kind of Senate we're seeing or we might see after May 9?
Right. So Gigi mentioned that it might turn out, we see like a family business in the Senate because based on the latest pre-election surveys, both Estrada brothers, Jinggoy and JV are in the Magic 12. And that's the same for Cayetano. He's polling in the top 5. So he'll be with his sister Pia. And that's the same case for Jojo Binay, who will meet his daughter Nancy, right? And Mark Villar and his mother Cynthia as well. But then aside from that, I think what's also really interesting is that, depending on how well the opposition candidates perform in this coming election, we might see the opposition totally wiped out in the Senate. Because I think one difference between 2019 and 2022 is that, yes, the performance of the opposition was bad. Not a single candidate got in, but you still had the likes of Risa Hontiveros, Frank Drilon, Laila de Lima in the Senate. But Drilon is graduating.
And is
Hontiveros,
retiring from politics.
right,
as well,
Kiko's
yeah.
retired. I mean, Kiko's running right now, so he can't go back to the Senate. And de Lima isn't performing so well in the surveys. Hontiveros is in the Magic 12, but then she's in a little bit of her numbers are a little bit dangerous.
Precarious?
Yeah, precarious. So at this point, you might see, I think, 2019 you had them, but then 2022 you might not have anyone at all. So I think that's also something that's really big.
Which I point out siguro na we talk about that kasi normally sa Senate, di ba, parang at least under Duterte, parang sa Senate minsan, kumbaga sila yung pumipigil kasi may supermajority yung House of Representatives. So sometimes you see the Senate or the senators, blocking mga attempts at railroading ng mga allies ni Duterte sa lower house. So joining us now is the LaSalle University Professor July Tehanqui. Professor Tehanqui, are you with us now?
Yes. Good afternoon, Bea.
Hello, July. What are your, we talked about the upcoming Senate, yung mukha magiging composition ng Senate. So let's jump off from that, no?
Right.
What kind of political world will we be living in? Yun nga, parang yung Senate, malamang kung magkaka-opposition, napakaliit. Yung House naman traditionally magiging majority/super majority yan, whoever wins the presidency. So what kind of political landscape are we looking at in the Philippines?
Well, right. Yung pag-liit ng opposition, it's common ever since the restoration of both houses of Congress in 1987. No? Naturally, the politicians would affiliate, despite of their party affiliation, they would affiliate with the majority administration. No? So, because that's the nature of how things get done in the legislative bill. No? The primary capital use is the patronage, the patronage exchange between the executive and the legislative. No? But ang mas nakakabahala na development, yung na-report na ni Gigi, is that for the first time, kung magkakatotoo yung nasa survey at mahalal itong mga miyembro ng political clans and dynasties, that would be almost 8 if not 8 of the 24-seat Senate. No? That comprises practically 1/3 of the Senate. No? This is the first time na nagkaroon tayong ganito kadaming political families, no, magkakamag-anak sa Senado, no. And ito'y kinocompose ng, if ever, dalawang magkapatid at isang mag-ina at isang mag-ama, no. Now, this is disturbing because the Senate has always been considered the upper chamber and for some even the better chamber, no. Kasi nga in the old Senate, no, in the old Congress, no, only the best and the brightest gets elected in the Senate. No? In fact, the root word of the very word Senate, it comes from the Latin senex, no, or senatus, no, which means old man, no, not old in the sense na matanda, but wise, no, may wisdom, no. So ang tanong natin, no, with the incoming composition of the Senate and the retirement of the old guards of the upper house, no, masasabi pa ba natin na the best and the brightest ito?
Okay, if in the event that it's a Marcos victory, we know that this is going to be a very, very friendly Senate. In the event of a Robredo victory, what kind of relationship would she have with the Senate that seems to about to come in now?
Again, no, if ever VP Lenny wins the presidency, then we will see the same. Kasi nga, it's part ng kahinaan ng party system natin. And essentially what we have is patronage-driven politics and governance. No? So it's always a game of quid pro quo. No? So nakita naman natin, miski nung panahon ni Noynoy Aquino, nung nanalo siya, no? Lahat ng dating kakampi ni Gloria, no? Ay nagtalo ng naman sa Liberal Party. And the same goes naman nung nanalo si President Duterte. Lahat ng Liberal Party tumalon sa Pilipinas. So we will see the same influx of chalecos and balimbings, no, to whoever wins, no, this Monday's election.
Naalala ko noong 2016, parang hindi pa tapos yung pagbilang ng boto. Wala pang final na pagtaas ng kamay ng winner. Yung mga yellow shirt na wala, naging red na bigla.
Naging red bigla. And most of them were barilan at kabarkada ni Inoy. So yun nga disappointing.
Yeah, they were very close to former President Aquino. And they actually met even before Election Day, when it was very clear that the Duterte was going to win and had already planned out their moves then.
Yeah. We're looking at live footage from Isko Moreno's meeting the Avance sa Tondo, Manila. I believe that's a performer pa now. Malamang naman kasi sa gabi pa yan magsalita si Mayor Isko later on during his meeting the Avance. July, the last time that we were together in a panel, no, parang pinag-usapan natin yung aftermath ng Easter bonanza. Ano bang tawag natin doon? Yung Easter na ganap, no?
Easter fiasco.
Now that we're down to, my gosh, 2 days until election day, tama ba? May lingering effect ba yun? Siguro ngayon kaya natin mag-step back ng konti, no, to make better sense of what happened because of that press conference.
Right. So kung ang basihan natin ay yung sa survey, no, obviously nagkaroon ng epekto sa kanya. No? Ito sa talagang isang malaking miscalculation on their part. No? Kumbaga sa poker, nag-all-in sila, no? All or nothing, no? At itinaya nila lahat thinking na more or less makakapunto sila, no? And apparently not, dahil maraming pumalas na supporters, no? And marami rin na turn off na possible supporters niya. So ang nabasa ko nga sa social media, no, mukhang yung kampanya ni Mayor Isko is dying inside. So medyo nag-improve.
Yeah, I think parang one of the major effects of that press conference, based on Pulse Asia at least, di ba? Umangat pa si Senator Pacquiao over Isko Moreno.
Curious ako, was it the message ng third force mismo na ayaw ng Pilipino, or was it the way he delivered the message and demanded that Robredo withdraw?
And because also clearly parang lihis siya sa gusto ng communication strategy ni Senator Lacson at kahit ni Norberto Gonzales, di ba, he also retracted or nag-apologize siya later on.
Right. So kasi nga, their primary message was unity among the other players, but in the end, they projected disunity rather than unity. Hindi sila nagkasundo. Hindi man sila nag-stick sa talking points nila, no? So I think the message of a third force, no, is still a valid narrative, no? But the problem was kung ang katulad ng pinag-usapan natin Bea the last time, no? Kung kasi ang major narratibo ng kampanyang ito ay continuity and change from the Duterte administration, mas magandang alternative yung third force or third wave kung si Mayor Sara yung tumakbo. Kaso wala ngang direct link kay President Duterte tumakbo. So sinong pwede mong sabing administration opposition, no? Hindi mo rin naman pwedeng paniwalaan ng totoo yung sinasabi yung laban ng dalawang pamilya dahil wala namang akinong yung laban ngayon, no? So kulay pa kamo, no? Yung pula at dilaw, no? Pero hindi nga no? Ang naging issue ngayon dahil nga naging front-running candidate si Bongbong Marcos, ang naging issue, papayag ba ang taong bayan na makabalik ang mga Marcoses sa Malacanang, no? At kung yun ang naging ngayong focus ng kampanya, siyempre yung mga counter Marcos, no, yung mga dating anti-Marcos narrative, nag-gravitate towards the pink movement and kay Vice President Lenny Robredo. So hindi na naging valid yung kanyang option of a third force. Plus, naging muddled yung narrative niya kasi wala siyang message discipline, no? Nung una pumustura siyang pwede siyang kakampi ni Vice President Lenny, tapos nagalit siya kay Vice President Lenny. Nung tumakbo, lumipat naman siya kaya gusto niyang suyuin yung mga supporters ni President Duterte. So parang hindi rin nagustuhan ng tao yung palipat-lipat, yung walang isang posisyon. At ang huling sa tingin ko pagkakamali niya, alam naman natin yung background niya and he's proud of it and that's part of the power of his narrative. Nagaling siya sa wala. Pero kahit nagaling ka sa wala, isang malaking bagay pa rin yung pagiging maginoo, no? So yung maaanghang na salita na pinakawalan niya sa isang babae katulad ni Vice President Lenny ay hindi yata nagustuhan ng mga botante.
Gigi is still on the line. Gigi, si Mayor Isko at si Ping Lacson, ang lagi nilang binabanggit ang itong silent majority na ito. Hindi ko alam kung third wave din. Ito din ba yung third wave na sinasabi or iba pa tong silent majority na ito? Meron nga bang silent majority based at least on previous Philippine presidential elections?
Wala. Lalo na ngayon that there are different kinds of surveys, di ba nga nag-aaway-away pa. Sinong tama tungkol sa figures ni Bongbong at ni Lenny? Merong mas mataas si Bongbong, merong mas mataas si Lenny, pero pansinin mo, all those surveys, regardless of methodology, ang nakaka-capture is that mababa sila. Mas mababa si Isko sa kanila, lalong mas mababa si Ping Lacson sa kanila. So I think ang point ko lang is there will always be a way to capture the sentiments of at least segments of the population. And if all those ways of capturing those sentiments hindi lumalabas na merong malaking pumapabor sa iyo, I don't think meron tayong pinag-uusapan na silent majority. Hindi pwede kasing merong support sa iyo na hindi lalabas or ma-express in some ways.
Lalo na ngayon sa social media, 'di ba? Parang walang Facebook, walang Twitter yung majority na yun. Parang it's kind of harder to imagine a silent majority. So ibig sabihin even before the age of social media, itong silent majority wish na to ay isang wish lang.
I think ang silent majority basically, hindi siya sa, let's say, marami kayong mga kandidato. It's usually a status quo, the power, and those who would like to challenge it but aren't quite yet ready for it. Yun yung silent majority. Pero pag yung dalawa na kayo sa malaking field na nagsasabing silent majority, mathematically it doesn't compute really.
Ano yun, parang silent, very minority. Thank you, Miriam Grace Go, live from the Rappler Newsroom. Babalik tayo kay Professor Tehanki in a bit. But we have now live from General Santos City, Aika Ray, the reporter who covers Senator Manny Pacquiao. Aika?
Hello.
Kamusta? Kamusta sa General Santos ngayon? Mainit ba?
Actually, maganda yung panahon ngayon, no? Mainit. Medyo umambon lang kanina, but we're not expecting na masuspoil ng ulan yung magiging meeting de Avance mamayang gabi. Kahapon, no, si Senator Pacquiao actually nag-start na siya nung kanyang mga meeting de Avance sa Cebu City at kinover din natin yun.
Bakit Gensan, Aika?
Gensan kasi ito yung talagang tinatawag niyang home eh. Dito na siya lumaki, dito na siya nakilala, di ba? Parang nung naging boxer siya, galing siyang Gensan. At kahit naman na naging senator na siya, naging congressman siya ng Sarangani, no? Pero dito pa rin talaga yung dito yung residence niya. So ito yung reason, no, kung bakit talaga sinabi niya nga, dito ako nagsimula at dito rin ako magtatapos. Yun ang kanyang linya.
Jumping off from yung Easter press con, initially sinabi nila sasama si Senator Pacquiao, hindi siya sumali, at mukhang he benefited from that decision kasi he gained, he overtook Isko Moreno to third place. Natanong niyo na ba si Senator Pacquiao about that, Aika?
Actually, di pa rin kasi talaga masyadong naniniwala si Senator Pacquiao sa mga survey, no? Especially nitong mga institutionalized na polling firms. For him, mas mataas pa rin siya. Based dun sa kanilang internal surveys, number 2 siya, hindi lang siya number 3. Although, sinasabi niya na posibleng parang dark horse in a way. Ito yung tinatawag nilang baka kahit na at least itong mga traditional polling firms pinapakita na survey laggard siya, baka posibleng ang manalo siya. At ang kanyang explanation dyan ay dahil nga nire-representa niya yung class D and E. And meron siyang mga numbers na binabanggit actually, parang yung housing project niya na meron na daw mga 40 million na nag-sign up. So, ine-estimate niya kahit siguro mga 50% daw or even like a percentage of that will vote for him. No? So, yun yung ine-expect niya. Not necessarily yung Easter Sunday press conference kasi if we look at the numbers, ranking lang naman talaga yung nagbago eh. Senator Pacquiao's numbers, hindi siya ganun kataas. Mga 5% from before. Month before that, mga 7-8%. So, itong very recent survey na to na 7%, hindi siya talaga ganun ka-huge of a bump for him.
I'm curious though, Aika, when he talks about that, him polling in number 2 in his own surveys, how does that feel like on the field? Do you see that it resonates? Do you see that people are actually showing up for him, especially, let's say, in Gensan alone, where he's ending his campaign?
So, sa General Santos City, we went to the place we're supposed to hold the MTA. Mga hapon na yun eh, after lunch. Pero wala pa rin tao kasi hindi pa rin sila actually tapos mag-set up. So, right now, unlike dun sa ibang mga presidential candidates na yung mga tao talaga maaga pa lang, no? Or even, for example, sa meeting de Avance ni Vice President Lenny Robredo na yung mga tao, the night before pa lang, nandun na sila to camp out, di ba? Walang ganon dito. And I think it's because dito sila nakatira eh, bahay nila to. So, town nila to. So, it's easier for them to go to the venue. But in terms of sorties, we're seeing, at least in the last stretch of the campaign, Senator Pacquiao has been consistently late in his sorties. And yun na nga, nabanggit ko rin to whenever we're talking about campaigns, no? Na even if late si Senator Pacquiao, minsan inaabot na siya ng, for example, meron siyang isang sortie na in Cebu, supposed to start yung entire schedule niya at 7 a.m. Pero na-push back because nagkaroon siya ng mga priorities, other priorities na he has to attend to. At late na siya nakarating. Minsan hapon, minsan gabi. Pero yung mga tao talaga nag-aabang pa rin talaga sa kanya. And I think it's because a lot of people actually believe in him. And it's not like, it's very different. It's a very different scenario if you go to, say, third or fourth or fifth class municipality. Kung kumpara mo sa talagang city. Medyo yung crowd is very different and makikita mo talaga yung mga tao parang very excited to meet him. Means sa while, kasi syempre kailangan nilang uwi kasi ang tagal na ni Senator Pacquiao. Pero babalik sila kapag narinig na nila, dyan na si Senator Pacquiao. Tapos very excited talaga sila. And I think, interesting point din to, in his MDA last night, talagang yung mga tao, habang binabalikan niya yung storya niya, no, na hindi siya nakakakain, tubig lang iniinom niya, homeless siya, may talagang mga napapaiyak na tao. And talagang yung kwento niya na yun, nagre-resonate sa kanila. So, but yun na nga, may mga tao, I feel like meron talagang core supporters si Senator Pacquiao and you can see it in sorties. But then the numbers, it's not at par with other presidential candidates.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go to July quickly. July, yung sinasabi ni Senator Pacquiao, no, parang in a way, silent majority din yung hinahanap niya, no? Because he's saying that classes D and E are underrepresented in surveys, which is the opposite of what critics are actually pointing out sa mga surveys na overrepresented naman sila. Does this make sense to you for him to say this? Or parang ano lang to? Kumbaga, part na rin to ng kampanya to encourage his supporters pa rin to root for him?
Oo, siyempre, no, kasi naman, no, from the very beginning, no, talagang mahina, no, mababa ang numero niya. So, never siya naka-reach, no, sa 5 or 6 yata, no, and napako siya sa 2, no. So, this entire debate on surveys and all, no, I think malalaman na rin natin eventually, no, by Monday alin pa talaga ang totoo, no. But ang sa akin, no, ang nakakatawa kasi, no, yung mga politiko, no, at yung mga supporters kasi, no, pag lamang ang kanilang naman, no, siyempre binabandet nila yung survey, no. Pero pag dehado sila, no, pati yung mga nagsasurvey na. So, ang sa akin lang, ako ay naniniwala kasi sa science and statistics. Bagamat may mga pagkakataon na pwede magkamali ang survey, no? But generally, no, survey done well and surveys done by professional organization with a track record, definitely more or less maasahan. No? So, ngayon kung pwede na ba nating malaman o hulaan ang resulta by using Google Trends or whatever, hindi pa natin alam. Kasi yung mga statistician mismo, hindi sila nagkakaroon dyan. No? So, ang sa akin, yun nga, no? Pampalubag loob, no? Siyempre, wala namang kandidatong magsasabi na, no? Natalo na tayo sa survey. So, talagang decided to dig in and fight it out until the end. No? And I think we should respect them for that.
Of course. I'd like to thank Aikari for joining us live from General Santos City. She'll be covering the meeting the Avance of Senator Pacquiao later tonight. Meanwhile, let's check out live footage from Vice President Leni Robredo's meeting the Avance in Makati. On screen now, I think, is Father Flavi, correct? Si the Robredo and Pangilinan tandem, no, parang sunod-sunod recently lalo yung mga endorsements, explicit endorsements from different religious organizations. How? Not just religious organizations, rather, but priests, right?
Actually, yes. The priests are a major change because traditionally, religious orders can endorse, but diocesan priests, bishops, clergy, usually no yan sa kanila. And yet we saw the, Nueva Cáceres yesterday and the bishop, and just today, Bishop Almenaza and the entire diocese, well, majority of the clergy of the Diocese of San Carlos, just came out openly endorsing Robredo. So medyo may change talaga yon. Just 2 days ago, si Bishop was telling me, baka mahirapan pa kami kasi usually we don't. Individual capacity, but apparently something made them change their mind. And today, they came out with that endorsement.
Right. Was it surprising to you?
No, it wasn't. Not for Alminaza. Not for Bishop Alminaza. He's always been open about it. But surprised that they have actually taken a break. It's not as big a break as a priest running for office, but it's certainly a break from the traditional discipline that says
Hands-off.
do not endorse.
I'm curious though, like what goes into the thinking of, priests, bishops before they decide whether or not to have a more active say in politics in an election season? Do they need to ask for permission?
Well, traditional in a church, a bishop is answerable to the Pope. Ganun yan, no? But nung nakausap ko yung ibang mga priests from different dioceses 2 months ago, they were already consulting kasi with their laity, no, ang laiko. So pag strong ang push ng laity, then yung clergy nagkakaroon ng courage siguro, or nai-influence din sila to go beyond the normal. So which I think is what happened here.
So nandun ulit yung grassroots na movement, no. We'll talk more about the endorsements in this 2022 campaign, but for now we are joined by Pia Ranada, the reporter who covers Manila Mayor Isko Moreno. Pia, are you there?
Hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, Pia. Hi, Pia. Kamusta so
Yeah.
far sa meeting the Avance ni Yorme?
Oh, ito. So, ngayon nasa Tondo ako, Moriones Tondo. I'm not sure if you can hear the program behind me, but kasi that road is Moriones at yun nga, yung stage nandoon. But nandito lang ako sa Eskinita kasi masyado maingay, so hindi ako makakapagsalita ng maayos. But yeah, it's the pre-program has begun. So the pre-program just means performers are on stage to entertain the crowd. It started around 4 p.m. The hosts were hyping up the crowd and talking about Yorme, talking about Isko Moreno, and talking about all of the lines that Isko supporters usually say. Like sabi nga nila parang wag kayong maniwala sa 4%, parang hindi lang 4% si Yorme. So ganyan yung mga lines na I often hear covering his campaign. The rejection of survey results from Pulse Asia and the insistence that there is a vast silent majority ika nga for Isko Moreno. So 5:30 p.m. yung start ng mismong meeting the Avance. We're not sure what time Isko Moreno himself will go on stage, but definitely he will be the last speaker. And yun, that's why sa likod ko there has a crowd has already gathered in front of the stage. Onti pa lang so far, but we expect more to come in the next few minutes.
Pia, I'm curious, right, you mentioned Mayor Isko has been talking about also another silent majority, and he has his own surveys as well. I'm curious what you think or what you expect to be his last pitch. Today is the last day of campaigning, so what might be his last pitch to that silent majority or maybe the people who are still undecided at this point?
I think his pitch will be the same. For the past few days, he's been really pushing this idea of non-toxic candidate, like saying that yung mga rabid Marcos and Robredo supporters are just a preview of what he calls parang a kind of kaguluhan or chaotic presidency if either Marcos or Robredo wins. So yung kanyang pitch is if you want governance that focuses not on political rivalries but on the plight of the people, vote for him. Yun yung kanyang messaging. Kasi nga, wala siyang baggage ng Marcos clan, wala rin siyang baggage ng Liberal Party or what people call Dilawan. So yun yung kanyang pitch and we will just have to see if that is effective. He's been saying things like, he actually kind of adopted the 2 joints finger sign. Diba usually parang ano lang yan, parang for fun, parang it's just to relate to the youth. But recently he's actually used the 2 joints hand sign to prove na chill lang daw siya. Kasi alam na natin 2 joints, diba, associated with marijuana use, which is like to relax, to be more relaxed. So parang yun, medyo tweak niya yung use of that hand sign to kind of make it consistent with his vote for me because I'm the non-toxic candidate messaging.
Pia, usually itong mga meeting the Avance, no? Iba-iba yung dahilan kung ba't pinipili ng mga campaign yung venue, parang yung iba strategic. But I think in Mayor Isko Moreno's case, it's part nostalgic, right? Kasi malapit ba ito? Tama ba sa kung saan siya lumaki in the first place?
Yeah, so kasi lumaki siya sa Parola district. It's just a few kilometers from here and this is still Tondo. So ito yung syempre yung area kung saan nagsimula yung kanyang story, no, as a 10-year-old garbage collector, pedicab driver. not far from here are people who he's known since childhood. So it's very symbolic. And in fact, medyo powerful nga yung imagery dito na, you can see behind me, para mga kids just, playing in the streets. And not long ago, Isko Moreno was just like that kid. Those kids behind me, diba? Parang playing with other children in Tondo, trying to make a living, living out in the streets, no matter how dirty or how chaotic Manila streets can be, diba? Still forging a life here. So symbolic siya, but also strategic because we know that Manila is a bailiwick, so he's expected to command, it should be a sizable crowd for the meeting the Avance tonight. Kasi syempre hawak niya yung local government, hawak niya yung resources, hawak niya yung mga supposedly the people of Manila, right? If it's true that they're happy with his mayoral term, that they would show up for him tonight.
Curious lang ako that he's very young. A lot of people were saying Scott shouldn't have really run for the presidency kaya ang bata niya pa, no? But now, in the event, that he doesn't make it, what do you foresee? What's he gonna do for the next 3 years anyway, Anong sa tingin mo ang pwede niyang gawin, mabawi itong setback sa kanya?
Well, alam mo, if you ask him, no, he will always say na mag-retire siya. Kasi yung promise daw niya sa kanyang asawa, si Danny Domagoso, is after this bid, if he loses, he will retire.
Medyo hirap tayo sa signal ng konti. We'll go back to Pia as soon as her signal stabilizes.
The way he talks about it, parang set in stone.
We'll bring Pia in later kung medyo mas maayos na yung signal niya. But for now, let's talk to July. Ito nga, yung actually, Inday, interesting yung sinabi mo, di ba, na too early. Kasi parati ko narinig yan. Noong 2016 din, meron ding kandidata na sinabihan ng mga tao na ang aga pa masyado, dapat ganito muna. I'm curious, July, do you believe in that, na dapat parang may X number of years of service ka muna in whichever branch of government or whichever position before you can dream of running for the presidency?
Okay. In terms of, hindi naman just say that, but in terms of timing, in politics, everything is timing. Marami din tayong mag-iingating na pinto ng nakaraan na maling timing. Dahil mali yung timing nila, hindi na sila nakapalik at hindi na nagkaroon ng pangalawang pagkakataon i-contest ang presidency o then the vice presidency. So, ang mayors ko, kaya maraming nagsasabi na maaga pa. Kasi nakita yung potential niya. Nakita, maganda yung acting niya, maganda yung event niya, maganda yung nagawa niya mula sa kagapan, he made himself into something. And yun ang in the span of 3 years, marami siyang nagawa sa Maynila na hindi nagawa mga na una sa kanya in several administrative terms. No? So, yun yung pinanghihinayang ng karamihan na sinabi. At isa rin ako na nagsabi nung sinabi ko sa mga close advisors na mukhang maaga pa. No? Kung si Isko ay manahimik sa Maynila ng 9 years, no? 3 terms, no? Alam mo, at matutog na lahat ng plano sa Maynila. Ako sa Maynila, nakita ko rin naman na improvement dito. Hindi na niya kailangan tumakbo, presidente. Ihahalal siya ng buong Pilipinas. No? May mga iba ring advisors na nagsabi sa kanya, strike while the iron is hot, may si kami financial siguro na mag-convince sa kanya. So, he is where he is right now because of that.
Thank you, July. Thank you, Pia. She is in Tondo right now. She'll be covering the meeting, the Avance of Mayor Isko Moreno later tonight. We are now joined live from Davao City. He took over my responsibilities dapat in covering Mayor Sara Duterte and Davao City. Rappler reporter Ralph Rivas, he's now following the candidacy of Vice President Sara Duterte and he's also covering the Davao local election. Ralph, kamusta dyan? Hello, Ralph.
But again, yung short experience ko dito sa pag-cover kay Sara Duterte, no? I guess napakita talaga niya na she's still well loved here dito sa Mindanao kasi halimbawa dito sa meeting the Avance ng Unity doon sa Tagum City is talagang na, talagang people really waited kahit pa maulan, maputik, like talagang the the elements were there pero people stayed and talagang syempre kapag Bisaya talagang makikinig ka sa kwento, no? Kasi talagang the stories of Sarah talagang people connected and hindi natin nakita doon yung some incidents, di ba, kapag sa meeting the Avance ng Unity Team ay minsan nag-aalisa ng ibang tao kapag si Bongbong Marcos na nagsalita. Pero sa Tagum kasi people stayed until the end and tried to get photos of him. So yun yung experience ko. And but another interesting thing there is that of course yung Tagum City and Davao del Norte, si Leni Robredo yung sinusuportahan ng 9 out of 11 mayors, including the Tagum City Mayor himself. So, may mga konting hirit yung unity team pagdating doon. For instance, si Harry Roque asked yung mga umattend ng meeting the Avance, no, kung mahilig daw ba sila sa itlog na pula. Of course, itlog na pula is an insult to Leni Robredo having red or pink shell pero yellow on the inside. And unfortunately, nagulat din ako na kung gaano ka bastos yung bibig ng the likes of Larry Gadon. Parang, oh my God, I mean, I knew that he was gonna be, this of a character, pero I found it shocking din, Bea. So yun.
Yung joke nga namin kay Ralph, welcome sa Unity Team coverage. Ralph, bakit Tagum? Bakit hindi Davao City? Where Sara is the incumbent outgoing mayor.
Well, yeah, I mean, yun din yung tanong ko But I guess yung executive order na in-issue niya, hindi niya na talaga banning big political gatherings, hindi na niya binawi. I guess, I mean, yan din yung dapat kasi Tagum has what? Just under 300,000 yung population as compared to Davao City who has 1.7 million sa population. So talagang kung if they really wanted all the to flaunt the crowd, Davao City dapat, di ba? Kasi I mean, kung pumunta kung dun sa venue, no, parang dun sa Tagum, napuno nila yung venue pero they can't, I mean, kita mo naman na maliit lang yung venue So may limits lang din. Pero kung ako, ini-imagine ko kung Davao City yun talagang mas malaki yung crowd na mapapakita nila.
Okay, syempre home court advantage homecoming pod for Sara. Switch na ko gamay to Bisaya because Ralph also speaks Bisaya. Earlier pala, we were watching the live feed from Leni Robredo's meeting the Avance. We'll be going back to that in a bit, but let's talk about Davao a bit while Ralph is here with us. Ralph, yung Duterte dynasty sa Davao has been in power for 34 years, if I'm not mistaken. Once lang ata walang Mayor Duterte sa Davao City, but the whole time, either si Rodrigo Duterte or si Sara Duterte at ngayon tumatakbo naman si Sebastian Duterte. Pero may dalawang kandidato who are challenging the Dutertes of Davao. Can you talk to us a little about them?
Okay, so kaka-air lang natin kanina nung interview ko with Max Maglana who is running as first district representative of Davao City. Talagang mapapansin mo kung gaano kaliit yung campaign niya, pero nakasakay lang sila sa parang I think it was an L300 tapos merong konting banda and imi-meet niya yung mga tao para tinatry niya makipagkamay. Napaka-simple pero it also parang sinasabi niya na may chance and that she could actually win this despite the huge machinery of the Duterte dynasty. Kasi yung main takeaway ko sa conversation namin kanina is the charisma of the dad is there, pero iba yung pagtingin ng Davao sa mga anak. Particularly sa mga lalaking anak. So, I mean, medyo ipit kami sa oras ni Mags kanina, no? Pero yun yung isa sa mga takeaways ko na, an outsider could actually take this once, President Duterte steps down and, enjoys his life as a civilian. Kasi kahapon doon sa hugpong ng pagbabago na local na meeting di Avance dito, yun yung mismong sinabi ni Duterte, no? And let me just look, no? Sabi niya, he will no longer have a hand in government, and he emphasizes na hindi na siya makikisawsaw or advise each of his children. They have their own mind. And sometimes you try to help them, pero nagkakadiferensya lang kami. So yun talaga yung sinabi niya, magkakadiferensya lang sila if he tries to meddle kung ano yung gustong gawin ng mga anak nila. So exciting times ahead, or things that really kailangan nating tutukan at this point, kasi there's a big change that's gonna happen once President Duterte steps down.
Yeah.
Will it be instantaneous or not? I mean, kailangan abangan yan.
Yeah. May mga tanong pa kami kay Ralph, but for now, we're gonna focus on the live stream of the meeting de Avance ni Vice President Leni Robredo and Senator Kiko Pangilinan. That's no other than Gary Valenciano performing. Parang kung star-studded lang, syempre may mga artista at may mga performers na nabanggit nga ni Rambo sa report niya nung kay Soto tsaka kay Lacson na campaign. But I think dito, it was even a point of criticism, right? Sa Robredo campaign, na parang ang daming artista.
Or people are only showing up because they want to see these artists perform.
Meron ganyan. On the other hand, marami rin artista yung team, no?
Yeah.
So dalawa sila.
Yeah. Yeah. Although like, one thing that I did notice sa Robredo campaign, no, parang siya, may waves of support coming, di ba? Siyempre, nung birthday rally ni Vice President Robredo, no less than Mimi Vice, came out biglaan, may surprise endorsement or pabonggang endorsement. May ano ba yun? May epekto ba yun, you think? I mean, it's nothing new to hear celebrities endorse a presidential, vice presidential, or a senatorial candidate. Party list nga, nag-uumapaw ng celebrity endorsers ngayon. Pero, anong may epekto ba yun? Or what are they trying to achieve with these endorsements?
I think depende kung sino eh. From the point of view, yung kay Vice President Robredo, yung tingin yata ng mga kasama niya, no? Ang biggest hurdle niya is to overcome yung claim, may not be necessarily true, pero persistent yung claim na elitista kayo, you know. So kaya kailangan maghanap talaga ng masa. Of course, si Vice is such a big star.
Oh, yeah.
And yet, the masa identify with Vice, who identifies with them, you know.
Yeah.
So importante yon, mahalaga yon, yung kanyang personality for the candidacy of
Kumbaga parang it's also a way to introduce the candidate to maybe a
Another
sector na hindi pa siguro nila, or siguro mababa sila, or hindi pa nila nakampanyahan?
O hindi pa kumbinsido. Ganun.
Tama.
I think also what's interesting is, for example, so of course, lending star power, but on the other hand, they each bring their own different message, right? So for example, yung speech ni John Arcilla, like that resonated with people who are already supporters, but could also hit the mark with people who, again, are undecided, not so sure, maybe soft on supporting her, could be convinced otherwise by another candidate at the last minute. So aside from offering star power, there's also, you know, the ability to use the messages that these new endorsements give the campaign. It breathes new life, like you mentioned, waves nga.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, diba, politics and celebrity in the Philippines, whether we like it or not, are super intertwined. You have
Politics, it's performance art, you know. So
July, what can you say about how intertwined, or would you disagree with that notion na sobrang hindi lang magkadikit eh, parang intertwined talaga yung celebrity culture tsaka political culture ng Pilipinas?
Right, oo. Ang sabi nga ng nasirang Louis Beltran, no, ang Pilipino ay mahilig sa PBA, no? Politika, basketball at artista, no? So siguro hindi pa kayo pinapanganak nung panahon ni Louis Beltrán, no? Pero siguro si Inday maalala. So talagang intertwined, no? Intertwined ang showbiz at politika sa bansa natin, no? Pero isa kasing kahinaan niyan yung yung personality-oriented politics natin. Dahil nga popularity ang namamayagpag, being recall, no? At hindi yung platforms, programs, and even ideologies, no? Dahil sa kahinaan ng ating mga political parties, no? So, isa pa, no? Hindi lamang dito sa Pilipinas, pero sa ibang bansa, no? Yung mga politiko kasi natin, politicians, are treated like brands, no?
Yes.
And they're marketed like shampoos, no? Like soaps, no? So, parang yan, no? Soft drink, no? Hamburger, or whatever, no? May mga endorsers, no? At yung, kumbaga, tatangkilikin ng consumers yung produkto mo kung mas sikat o mas mabigat yung mga endorsers. So, sa larangan ng political marketing, no, iyang endorsement ay isa sa mga tools na ginagamit. No?
Politicians as brands. Hindi ko alam kung ikatutuwa ko ba yun na realization or not, na parang mga brands din yung mga politicians natin. Julie, we talked about this before, I believe, the weakness of party systems. Does that play into that whole dynamics of how parties are weak in the Philippines? Kaya we turn to celebrity. Kaya ang laki, parang tila ang laki ng role ng celebrities in elections, whether we like it or not.
Right. Ano yan it comes in waves, no? May mga panahon na na hindi rin mapatok yung mga celebrities. In fact, malaking parte sila ng politika natin to the point na sila mismo ay nahalal na, no, into different political positions, no, elected positions, no. Pero meron ding pagkakataon na natatalo sila, no, at may pagkakataon din hindi effective yung paglahok nila sa politika, no. Dahil nga sa kadahilanan na mahina talaga ang ating party system, no. Tutukan natin yung nangyari lang sa kampanya ito, no. Sa kauna-unahang pagkakataon, walang opisyal na kandidato ang administrasyon, no. Saan pa man tignan mo man ng kasaysayan ng eleksyon sa Pilipinas, ngayon lang nagkaroon na ang administrasyon, ang ruling party ay walang kandidato, no? At walang inendorso na kandidato sa pagka-presidente, no? So, tapos yung mga partido na nag-endorse sa mga presidential candidates ay yung tinatawag na zombie parties, no? Yung mga patay ng partido biglang binuhay para magtatakbo ng mga kandidato, no? Katulad ng Partido Federal, no? Ang kauna-unang partido natin, Partido Federal, 1900, tapos Aksyon, Forma, so mga namatay na ito ng partido para sa kanila.
We're looking at the live feed again of Vice President Leni Robredo's meeting the Avance. Another huge crowd. At this point naman siguro hindi na nakakagulat na malaki yung draw or ang laki ng pink crowd tuwing nagrarally si Vice President Leni Robredo at Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Lalo na ngayon, meeting the Avance ito. Pero yung parati kong iniisip, di ba? Siyempre, ang laki ng crowd. Sa Naga nga, record-breaking kahapon. I believe, according to organizers, at one point, they said over 300,000 or close to 300,000 yung pumunta sa Naga City for the rally. Why don't we see it translated in the surveys? Or is that even a fair question to ask, July?
Yeah, kasi pinaliwanag ka ni Professor Ron Rose, no? Kung titignan natin yan like concentric circle, sa gitna yung kandidato, sa outer circle niya yung mga supporters, no? Yung mga talagang strong supporters. Tapos sa outside that concentric circle ay yung ordinary voters, no? Usually, ang nakikita natin sa mga campaign rallies ay yung strong supporters, no? Yung talagang who would go out of their way. Ngayon, paminsan-minsan, no? Lalo na dito sa nakikita nating phenomenon sa mga rallies ni Leni, no? Talagang may nakikita tayong maraming ordinaryong mamamayan na sumasali Pero sapat ba yun, yung porsyentong yun, na capture ng survey? Considering na gaano kalaki yung buong population ng voting population ng Pilipinas. No? Baka itong aktibong lumalako, iski daang libo sila, no? Daang libo sila, ay hindi pa rin nahagit nung siya. So, there is actually a scientific explanation. Yes. Ngayon, ang tanong, kaya bang i-convert ito into actual votes? No? Kaya kung sa kaya. No? Pero ang tanong, of course, yung panahon, no? Yung oras. No? Kumbaga, malapit na tayong matapos, sa Lunes, tapos na yung labanan. No? So, baka kulang pa yung process. Tapos, ang isa pa nga, yung tinatawag na bandwagon effect. Yan, sinasabi. No? Sa iba kasi, nakikita na ang ordinaryong botante ay sumusuporta kung saan llamado. No? At yan yung nakikita natin phenomenon sa unity, no? Kay Marcos Jr. Baka yung karamihan doon ay dahil nakitang ang taas ng numero niya, sumasali kay Ferdinand Marcos. Pero sa kabilang banda, ang opposite ng bandwagon effect, yung tinatawag natin underdog effect. Pag nakita ng mga supporters na dehado yung kanilang kandidato, no, mas lalo silang na-energize, mas lalo lupas ang loob nila, mas lalo silang naghihikayat sa mga top voters at undecided na lupas. No? Ang susi dito, kung hindi kayo naniniwala sa survey, lumakas kayo at bumoto at hikayatin yung ibang tao na bumoto para sa kanila.
Okay, let's go back to Ralph, who's still in Davao City. Diyan si Ralph actually hanggang election day. Ralph, syempre Duterte country ang Davao City bukod sa fact na incumbent mayor si Sara Duterte. I mean the reach of the dynasty, diba, intense din sa Davao City. But are we seeing pockets of volunteers or people? Parang ganun din ba sa Davao City as we see in other parts of the Philippines, yung strong na volunteer group for Leni Robredo, the opposition candidate?
Okay, I actually asked that kay Ruy Lopez na tumatakbong independent for mayor of Davao City, kung saan nakakalabanin niya si Baste Duterte, who will be running for the first time as Vice Mayor, Davao City Vice Mayor Baste Duterte, who's running for the first time as mayor. Itong si Ruy Lopez, kakasabi niya sa akin kanina, kakamping siya, ini-endorso niya si Leni Robredo at si Kiko Pangilinan. At sabi pa niya na sa flyers niya raw, kung sa one side nandun siya at saka yung accomplishments niya, and then sa other side nandun ang Leni Kiko. Yung mga anecdotes niya is may mga nai-impress sa sa CV niya na parang he's a lawyer and all that. Pero pag tingin mo daw sa kabilang side, pag nakikita nila yung Leni Kiko, nati-turn off. So, parang yung sinasabi tuloy ng mga volunteers ni Rui ay okay lang po na iba yung president at saka vice president ninyo. So, again, yung sinasabi ni Rui kanina, napakahirap na talagang gapang sa gapang dito sa Davao City para kontrahin yung kasi Sara Duterte is yung vice president ni Bongbong Marcos, and Sara is very charismatic dito.
Yeah. And then don't forget, di ba, parang beyond Davao City, parang they also solidified their network in Davao region via Hugpong ng Pagbabago. So kung bago kayo dito, yung Hugpong ng Pagbabago, yun yung party that Sara Duterte founded. Meron ding HTP, Ralph, tama ba? Yung party naman founded by President Duterte, pero yung kay Duterte is Davao City, HNP is Davao Region. Isa din yun sa core members ng Unit Team Alliance. Para lang din mag-gets nyo kung bakit namin sinasabi na parang ang intense ng network or napaka-established ng network ng mga Duterte sa Davao City. Again, salamat Ralph Rivas. Maghinay-hinay sa mi. Ikaw pod, mag-ingat ka dira until Election Day. Thank you for joining us from Davao City. From Davao, we are going to Cagayan de Oro. We will be joined by Rapplers Mindanao Coordinator Irby Gomez. Irby?
Hi, Bea.
Hello. So, pinag-usapan natin earlier with Ralph, no, yung parang are there pockets of volunteers trying to campaign for or supporting the opposition candidate in the presidential race? Of course, Leni Robredo, because Sara Duterte, who is mayor of Davao, is the running mate of Bongbong Marcos Jr. In Mindanao, alam naman natin sa Mindanao nagsimula, actually sa Cagayan de Oro nagsimula yung launch ng Rosa, di ba? May, parang does it resonate? Kumakapit ba siya sa voters in Mindanao?
Mahirap sabihin kung kumakapit, ano? But clearly, maraming Rosa rito. Minsan, I call it hybrid di ba? Kasi opposites. Yung isa is from the BBM Duterte camp, and on the other hand, Leni Robredo, magkaibang talagang positive and negative, no? So, but I see a lot of people nasa upper classes, ano, are either there for Leni Kiko or Leni Sara. Okay? Nasa lower talagang malakas yung BBM Sara. I think boost ito because of the na-boost because of Sara Duterte. Kasi in Mindanao, voters in Mindanao tend to be very regionalistic. Okay? Minsan bordering on wala nang critical thinking, basta taga Mindanao. Okay na yan.
Yeah, sir, it also helps kasi Sara ang Bisaya, di ba? Sa mga vice presidential candidates.
It's as if kung ano yung language, yung native tongue mo, kung saan ka pinanganak, it's as if yun ang qualification to become the president or the vice president. So mahirap kung ano, but definitely the Leni campaign is gaining ground, no? Sa Mindanao, I think Kiko Pangilinan will really have a hard time in Mindanao. Unless gumalaw talaga yung mga solid na Leni Kiko, no? Because si Sara Duterte parang shoe-in na as far as Mindanao is concerned. Because nga, as I said a while ago, very regionalistic ang mga taga Mindanao. And for the first time, kasi ganito, no? Since 2016, for the first time, ang Mindanao nakakatim ng the top position. The presidency, si President Duterte. And a lot of people here seem to turn a blind eye to the flaws, no, of the president, and all they see is kung anong magagandang supposedly na nagawa niya. And isang factor nun is Bisaya siya. He speaks Bisaya and is from Mindanao, basically. Ganon.
Siguro it speaks a lot din, Ruby po, no, sa kuan ka ng our desire for representation. Yun nga lang minsan na nasusupersede ng representation yung nabanggit mo nga, parang correct policies or kung sakto pa bang ginabuhat sa isa ka politician in effect. Ruby, earlier from Cagayan de Oro, di ba, two factions or two groups na who you probably never thought would unite under one candidate or under one cause actually endorsed Leni Robredo, pero our latest report, because of clashes among them, hindi natuloy yung isang Cagayan de Oro rally. Sana will that affect in a way how Vice President Robredo will do not just in Cagayan de Oro siguro, but in the province and in the region come election day?
Medyo nag-backfire. That backfired because although at first ang impression was si Lenny is winning the hearts of local politicians who are really both drawers as far as Cagayan de Oro and Misamis Oriental is concerned. Actually, hindi lang to dalawa, tatlong grupo to.
Oo, may dumagdag pala.
Sa Cagayan de Oro, it's the group of Rufus Rodriguez
Yeah.
and Clarex Uy. Clarex Uy is presently the congressman of the 1st District. Si Rufus Rodriguez is the congressman representative of the 2nd District of Cagayan de Oro. Si Clarex Uy is being endorsed by his candidacy for the mayorship is being endorsed by the outgoing mayor, Oscar Moreno, who happens to be the first local chief executive in Mindanao to declare his support for Robredo's candidacy in October 2021. Itong nakakatawa, Clarex Uy, whose ally, is supporting BBM, Bongbong Marcos. Okay. Now, also in Cagayan de Oro, the other group, the group of Rufus Rodriguez is endorsing, si Rufus is endorsing another mayoral candidate, Pompi Lavinia. Okay, and for the governorship, he is with Peter Unabia of the Emano Group. The Emano Group, apparently including Mr. Lavinia, are for BBM. Is for Lenny Robredo. So nakita mo medyo chapsuy, ano? Hindi maintindihan yung mga galaw nila. Now, in Misamis Oriental, that's the province of where Cagayan de Oro, geographically, nandun yung Cagayan de Oro. In Misamis Oriental, where Mayor Oscar Moreno is running for governor again, his old position, there's another gubernatorial candidate, Representative Juliet Uy of the 2nd District of the province, who has also taken the stand of the same stand taken by Rufus Rodriguez. She is also, her family, her group is for Lenny Robredo. But at the same time, they're endorsing to the bid of Sara Duterte for the vice presidency. So Rosa ito. Like Rufus Rodriguez, Juliet, the Uys of Misamis Oriental are also for Rosa. Okay. So the only Lenny Kiko group here na solid is the group of Oscar Moreno. Yet, ironically, yung bet niya for the mayorship, the mayorship of Cagayan de Oro is for BBM. So yun na situation. Labo-lab naglalab ang gulo. That's why hindi sila magkaintindihan nung supposedly there would have been a big rally in Cagayan de Oro by the group of Lenny Robredo and perhaps Kiko Pangilinan. Hindi natuloy kasi si Moreno, Rufus Rodriguez and Juliet Uy hindi magkaintindihan sa venue.
Which is a missed opportunity then for the Robredo campaign. Sana speaking of the Robredo campaign, we're watching a Bisaya, Kim Chiu, speaking now at the meeting the Avance. Yung unang labas ni Kim Chiu for Lenny Robredo was actually at the Mandaue City rally. Medyo malaki din yung hatak niya actually. Nagulat din ako. Siguro we tend to forget how big a star Kim Chiu is, especially kung may home court advantage siya. And she spoke straight in Bisaya during that rally, which I covered actually a few weeks ago in Mandaue City. Yun yung last na visit ni Vice President Robredo in Cebu City. Of course, bumalik pa dun si Senator Kiko Pangilinan. But before we talk about Cebu, we will be talking about Cebu in more detail in a bit. Let's bring back July. Sophia, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, I think Herbie, is July there?
Go.
Yeah, I think Herbie raised an important point about regionalism, no, and how Mindanaoans can pick, for example, Sarah, solely for the reason that she's Bisaya or Mindanaoan. And I think that also translates interestingly to Senator Manny Pacquiao, no. After Bongbong Marcos, he is the candidate polling, well, far behind, but in second place when it comes to Mindanao. July, curious about your thoughts here. What do you see? What's there to say about how strong regionalism is now when it comes to, the current candidates? Has it grown stronger over the years in past elections?
Yeah, so kasi nga, if you look at there's empirical evidence to support that you look at all the factors that affect voting behavior in the country, most scholars, most political scientists agree that it is only the ethno-linguistic identification that is a sure draw or a sure block of votes that a national candidate can depend upon. So ever since, even before pre-martial law politics, post-war politics in the country, your regional and even your linguistic identification is a factor for growing support in national election. So kaya makikita natin na talagang ang unang-unang sinusuyo ng bawat kandidato ay yung kanyang base constituency, yung regional value. At katulad din sa Mindanao, very proud ang Mindanaoans sa kanilang sariling kultura, sa kanilang kasaysayan at history. Kaya malakas yung suporta nila sa kung sino mang tumatakbo sa national sa Mindanao. Ganon din sa Visayas, lalong-lalo na yung mga Cebuano. Kasi nga, may ang running narrative dyan sa Visayas at Mindanao ay yung resentment dun sa so-called Imperial Manila. So, yun yung nagdadrive dyan. Talagang malakas yan. In fact, balikan ko nga rin yung kanina napag-usapan nyo, kung bakit sa Tagum, nag-meeting the Avance, ang Unity, si Mayor Inday at hindi sa Davao. Balikan natin na ang isa sa arch rival ni Mayor Inday ay si Congressman Bebot Alvarez. At baluarte ni Bebot Alvarez yung Davao del Norte at Tagum, at alyado niya ang gobernador na si Kuya Ed Jubahid. So manapahiya ang hukong ng pagbabago sa Davao del Norte nung nakaraang 2019 dahil na-wipe out ang mga Florendo at Del Rosario na kaalyado at opisyal ng pagbabago dyan sa Davao del Norte at sa Tagum. So malaking bagay. So dyan pa lang nakikita na natin kung gaano pa kahalaga nitong regional identification at ethno-linguistic sa labanan sa politika.
Yeah, to ano lang on that, sa 2019 nga, na ipanalo ni Sara Duterte yung Senate slate niya sa buong Davao region, pero malaking blot sa kanyang record yung Davao del Norte nga of all the regions, or of all the provinces rather, si Pantaleon Alvarez or the candidates whom he led, sila yung nanalo noong 2019. July, I'm wondering, kasi I look back at President Rodrigo Duterte's numbers from the April poll in the 2016 elections. Yung preference numbers niya in Mindanao was 61%. Right now, Sara Duterte is hitting 80%. Like, if you're talking about dominance, medyo, it's a little hard to wrap my head around an 80% preference in one particular region, no? Bakit, was there an explanation to this? Like, why is Sara proving to be potentially even more popular than her father, who is the incumbent, who is wildly popular based on opinion polling also?
Apparently, they see the Mindanao voters, no, who've been responsible for the record high popularity of the president. Also, no, during his entire almost 6 years as president, no, and he will go down in history as the most popular post-Marcos president, no, with his high approval ratings. No? So that is the same base that has been supporting the daughter, no, talagang phenomenal, 80%, no, sa Mindanao. So kumbaga, this is well, kung referendum to, it's a vote of approval and a vote for continuity of the Duterte brand, no, the Duterte style of politics, at least from the support base in Mindanao, the constituency in Mindanao.
July is still on Mindanao, and because Bea mentioned Sarah's popularity, how much of the support in Mindanao, for Sarah translates to or bolsters the support for BBM? Because if we're talking about regionalism, and a candidate being able to bank on where they come from, how much of a factor is Sarah's popularity bumping up, or is it at all a factor in bumping up BBM's numbers?
It is a major factor. In fact, it is not only a factor in this year's presidential election, it was a factor in the victory of Rodrigo Duterte. No? From the very beginning, the Duterte campaign in 2016 realized that they will not win if they do not have the support of the North. No? So yung palagi kong sinasabing yung Kingdom of the North and Kingdom of the South, no? The House of the Marcoses and the House of Duterte, although informal yung alliance nila, but practical, no? Yun yung naging one of the key elements, no, to the victory of Duterte in 2016. And I think that was also one of the deciding factors for them to continue their partnership, this time formally. No? So in effect, no, si Bongbong Marcos, while hindi siya lantarang in-endorse ni President Duterte, he has become the de facto administration candidate. No? And the fact that PDP Laban, which Comelec has now decided to wing, that has the right to the PDP Laban, imagine PDP Laban partido ni Ninoy Gregory ay ngayon ang tinatalain si Bongbong Marcos. So, yun. So, a large part of the 56 to 60% of Bongbong Marcos, no, it's part, but a large I think is coming from the diehard Duterte supporters.
Yeah, so we're watching Isko Moreno's meeting the Avance in Tondo. Speaking on stage is Mocha Uson, of course, one of the most diehard supporters of President Rodrigo Duterte during the 2016 campaign, all the way to his administration. She has endorsed Isko Moreno. In fact, hindi lang endorse, no? Parang one of the solid na sumasama sa mga rallies niya simula nung may isang rally that Pia did cover, simula nun sa lahat na halos ata ng rally ni Mayor Isko ay sumama na si Mocha Uson. She's also a party list representative, or she's running to be a party list representative. By the way, follow our live updates page kasi ang maraming meeting the Avance na nangyayari ng sabay-sabay. For more updates, follow our live updates page. Go to rplr.co/MDA. Again, rplr.co/MDA for updates on the different meeting the Avances around the country. rplr.co/MDA, capital letters yung MDA, baka malikaw kayo. So maraming meeting the Avance nangyari ngayon. Isko Moreno in Manila, we have Lenny Robredo's meeting the Avance in Makati and in Parañaque. That's the unit team meeting the Avance. The last of three meeting the Avances ni Bongbong Marcos Jr. ni Sara Duterte. July, before we let you go, noong 2019, parang, again, yun nga, parang the key takeaways from that election was una yung concerns over the party list nga na imbes na representing marginalized sectors, parang nananaig
Right.
daw. Yung criticism then was nananaig na yung mga party list that are actually represented by businessmen, and fueled by money, kumbaga yung pagkapanalo nila. And again, of course, yung opposition was nowhere to be found in the winning circle in the 2019 elections. Ngayong 2022 naman, I think one of the early things that we can see, even if hindi pa tayo in retrospect, hindi pa tayo naka-pull away and looking at the big picture, parang lalong na-erode yung parties. Kasi kita mo nga, yung majority party natin walang standard bearer. Hanggang endorso lang yung kinaya nila. Bongbong Marcos as a party, but PFP is more of like, it's a vehicle. It's not really, what do you think the 2022, the impact of the elections, the campaign period will have on Philippine politics in the years to come?
Well, sadly, it will continue the erosion of our party politics, and the weakening of our electoral politics in this country. I have said time and time again, it is political clans and not political parties that have been the building blocks of Philippine politics. And we are now seeing a consolidation, not only of the local political dynasties, but the apex of political power at the highest point. The consolidation, the unity of the two most dual and even dominant dynastic clans in the country. And for the first time, we would see a majority, if ever, Marcos Jr. also to his numbers and wins on Monday, we will see for the first time a majority president in the post-Marcos era, and ironically, it's the Marcos. And then it is only the second time in the post-Marcos era that we will see a tandem, a ticket elected jointly. The first one was the only one in recent history was, of course, Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo and Noli de Castro in 2004. So I'm seeing here a consolidation of dynastic politics in the country, and this does not augur well with reform politics.
Thank you, July, for joining us today. Pag-uusapan natin yung mga yan after siguro sa May 9 kung nakapagpahinga na tayo at naka-breathe in, breathe out at naka-step back na tayo to make better sense siguro of what happened in the 2022 campaign and on May 9, Election Day. Again, thank you, July Tehanti, for joining us today.
Thank you. Maraming salamat.
Now we'll be joined by our Rappler Visayas Coordinator Ryan Macaselo. He is live from Cebu. Ryan, tell us about the Cebu vote and its impact on national elections.
Hi, Bea. Mayong adlaw. So it's been a very hectic 2 weeks. So the week, 2 weeks ago, I think, we had Bongbong Marcos' Unity Tandem and Lenny Robredo holding huge rallies here in Cebu around the same week. And this week alone, Isko Moreno came back to Cebu for the second time for another grand rally in Cebu. And he was here at the same time as Manny Pacquiao. And Kiko Pangilinan came and his volunteers here held a rally for him without Vice President Robredo, which was interesting because it's perceived that Kiko Pangilinan is way behind Tito Soto and Davao Mayor Sara Duterte here. So it was one last push for him, and there's a lot at stake. I've said this probably over and over in our live reports that there are 3.2 million voters here in Cebu, and according to a lot of internal surveys from different political camps that we've talked to, there are a lot of undecided voters. And if we look at studies on when the undecided make their decision, it's really in the last week. So the push for these camps to convince the undecided, I think, was strategic on almost all of their ends, and it will be interesting to see how it will play out because I think it will make a difference in this last stretch.
Sunod-sunod po din Ryan, after ko ni balik ug Manila, the other two candidates also pala staged back-to-back rallies on top of Senator Kiko Pangilinan, who is running for Vice President. Ryan, ato ning nastoryaan, we talked about this when we were doing recaps and lives from Cebu City, unsay situation karon, like can you talk to us a little more about the local politics in Cebu? Ang matud pa ingon according to Governor Gwen Garcia, 'di ba, when Cebu speaks daw the nation follows. Pero unsa may situation dira, what's the situation in Cebu province?
Right. So the endorsement of One Cebu, which is the most dominant party in Cebu province, outside of the independent cities of Cebu City and Lapu-Lapu City and Mandaue, they endorsed the Marcos Duterte tandem, which was surprising for a lot of local observers because, first of all, the father of Gwen Garcia was an opposition lawyer during the 1986 snap election, meaning he was a lawyer for those opposed to the Marcos regime. And her brother PJ Garcia is still clinging to that, that legacy of being anti-Marcos, and that kind of caused a division in the family. So it's called One Cebu, but they're not one when it comes to their presidential candidate. So PJ Garcia, who is the congressman of the 3rd district in Cebu, which is on the western coast, he's still supporting Isko Moreno. And another interesting development that followed that was that the mayor of Dumanhog town, which is actually the town where the Garcias are originally from, came out to officially endorse the candidacy of Lenny Robredo. And so on Voices of the Regions, which is a program that that we have on Rappler, we talked about it yesterday. So plugging that, it's on every Friday at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
That One Cebu is united when it comes to local politics, but when it comes to national politics, it's not so united. But their machinery is significant, so it's still a significant endorsement, regardless of how you feel about One Cebu. So they command a lot of towns and a lot of votes, and the Cebuano, there's a lot of backlash against that. So the reaction of the Robredo camp was to hold a huge rally in Mandaue, which we both covered, and about, I think, 150,000 supporters came out.
Yeah.
Robredo was able to get some local chief executive supports, but not as much in 2016 as when she was a part of the ruling Liberal Party at the time. So in 2016, 90% of the local chief executives were members of the Liberal Party, and now they switched over to PTP Laban. So it's been her campaign here in Cebu, like in many other provinces, has been reliant on the volunteers. But she does have the support of Vice Governor Junjun Davide, who is still a member of the Liberal Party. The Osmeña family is supporting her. They're no longer incumbents. Tommy Osmeña was defeated by the late Edgar Labella in 2019, but his wife, Margot Osmeña, is running for mayor this time, but they're not supporting Kiko Pangilinan. So they're mixed. They're supporting the candidacy of Tito Soto, Senate President Tito Soto. And there have been small town mayors who have come out to support her, but nothing as big as One Cebu.
Yeah.
There were talks of the Doranos. They're another powerful family in the 5th district in northern Cebu. That Ace Dorano was supposed to endorse her. She was scheduled to appear at his rally, but that got canceled due to the official endorsement apparently not pushing through. But she's still in her rally in Mandaue. She expressed support for the platform of the Cebu gubernatorial candidate Ace Dorano and his running mate Vice Governor Junjun Davide, and their Cebu Priority Development Agenda, which is a multi-sectoral agenda and a plan for the development of Cebu with its healthcare, infrastructure, jobs, etc. So I think that statement kind of showed how even if that endorsement didn't push through, Roberto was able to show that the dynamic with her political families that she's engaged with during this election, or the political dynasties, as she said over and over again, is not transactional. So a lot of her supporters have stayed with the Ace Durano and Junjun Davide campaign. So you see, I think being a local reporter, it puts us in an interesting position of being able to observe the national campaigns and how the dynamics, you can connect the dots all the way down to the city levels, the barangay captains, the grassroots organizations, to the mayors, governors, and all the way up to the national campaigns. So there are even a lot of local politicians who are not coming out supporting any candidate, but are quietly operating, are supporting, Denny Robredo, or some are supporting Manny Pacquiao quietly, or Isko Moreno. So it's a very nuanced and a very complicated situation.
Yeah. We're watching in set sa live stream natin the meeting the Avance of Vice President Lenny Robredo and Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Speaking on stage now is the surrogate of Senator Laila De Lima. Of course, she is seeking re-election while she is detained in Camp Krame. So, yun yung interesting din no, sa mga, before that, because we are covering all the meeting the avances of the different presidential candidates and vice presidential candidates today. For live updates on all of them and also each individual meeting the avance, follow our live updates page. That's at rplr.co/MDA, capital MDA. Again, rplr.co/MDA, capital MDA. You'll get updates from the reporters on the field, context also sa mga sinasabi sa meeting the Avance, hopefully to help you decide, if you haven't yet, who to vote for on May 9. Interesting, no, Inday? Sorry, nagbibisaya ako minsan. yung dynamic na nagkahiusa sila sa national level or they're united for Sophia's benefit, parang they consolidate who to support on the national level. Pero on the local level, the same people who support the same national candidate, panagsa sila gubot or wala sila nagkasinabot or kumbaga, bahala na si Batman how the alignments, like, bakit ganon yung dynamics kayo? Or why does that seem to be something that you always see in the national and local na dynamics?
Well, one, for local politicians, for example, pwede sila magkaisa sa national. Kasi ito yung sinasabi no, na pag malapit ka sa kusina. No? So they believe that if they win, they help a presidential win, then may babalik yan sa kanila in terms of the focus, the attention on them. That being said, it's always personal interest ang magta-trump there. And sa locals, these are all dynasties, magigirian pa rin yan. And now, the challenge is for the national candidates because you don't want to alienate one sector or the other, no? So, kailangan magtitimpla ka. But I was going to ask Ryan nga kay Ace Durano, yung kumbaga yung gains and losses na column niya. So, he didn't, finally, he decided that he wouldn't openly endorse Vice President Robredo. So, curious ako dun maybe Ryan can answer this. Like, mahihirapan, did Ace feel? Was it just because he's a good party man and he will toe the line? Or did he feel that if he went, against, kung si Lenny ang piliin niya, ang kanyang mga party mates na for Bongbong would turn against him?
So risking his own candidacy, Ryan?
Yes, I think in that regard, Durano, I think, is very pragmatic. I think the family, not only has the family had a very long history with the Marcoses, but there would, I think, the repercussions of not supporting Marcos and supporting the losing bet, I think, would be greater. But I think he was stuck between a rock and a hard place this time because the Roberto's support in Cebu is significant. I wouldn't say if it's majority or not, but they were very excited about the possible endorsement because it's someone they wouldn't expect to endorse Roberto, and someone who has influence in at least part of the province, and he received blowback from Roberto supporters here in Cebu. So I think they weighed it out, definitely, and they made their choice. But he did not. He was very careful in how he said that he would not make an official endorsement. He did not say that he himself was endorsing BBM, but that he would always be very specific that my party signed a manifesto supporting BBM, but I did not sign it. So I think he was very careful with how he treaded that territory with that issue when it came about. So he was trying to appease both supporters. I remember attending one press conference of the Doranos where the room was literally split in half. On the left side, you had his supporters from the unit team supporting his candidacy and Junjun Davide, and on the right side, you saw the pink clad supporters supporting Lenny Ace Junjun. So I think it's been a very, he really had to tiptoe and be careful with how he handled dealing with the national candidates. And I think he weighed it out and made his choice with what would have these repercussions on his candidacy.
Ryan, you mentioned that first the Duranos have this very long relationship with the Marcoses. So ang tanong dyan, bakit si Gwen? Did the Garcias also have that kind of long, deep relationship? Kasi parang mas malapit si Durano dati, no? What was it that made Marcos Jr. choose Gwen? Dahil ba malakas talaga si Gwen or what?
Yes. I think it's all about power because Gwen's influence stretches throughout the entire province. Even if they're not her family members, she is very good at ensuring support from her allies, from all the way from the smallest, sitio in northern Cebu, all the way down to the south. There are members of One Cebu, whereas the Duranos, after the fall of Marcos in 1986, their power has been limited to towns in the 5th Congressional District, which is centered around Danao City. So from a political standpoint, it makes the most sense to ally with the Garcias, regardless of her family legacy, because she has her family has the more influence than the Doranos. Of course, the Doranos did not take that lightly, which is I think why they considered or toyed with the idea of supporting Robredo during her visit in Mandawi City. They had a meeting. They had a sit-down meeting together with the father Ramonito Durano and with Ace Durano. So it seemed like that was really going to work out, and it would have been a very historic alliance with the Duranos because during the Marcos regime was when the Duranos were at their most powerful. The Garcias are a new dynasty. The patriarch, I think Pablo Garcia has only been his rise to power only took place in the last half of the 20th century, from the 1980s onward. That's when we really saw the Garcias rise. And Gwen Garcia, Governor Gwen Garcia, is the most influential member of the clan now. And before that, the Davao Mayor Sara Duterte, I think was very intelligent. It was a very intelligent choice to choose Cristina Garcia Frasco, of the mayor of Liloan Town and Gwen's daughter, to be her spokesperson. And I think that was their key and their entry point into obtaining that endorsement of One Cebu and the alliance with with the Garcia family. Correct.
Hindi lang siya endorsement. Saka yung interesting dito sa One Cebu Unit Team thing, hindi lang siya, kumbaga hindi lang siya para i-support ang unit team, di ba, Ryan? Parang it's also, in a lot of ways, consolidating power talaga of the Garcia clans, One Cebu in the province. Again, we're watching the meeting, the Avance of Vice President Leni Robredo and Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Speaking on stage now is Chel Jokno, human rights lawyer Chel Jokno. Let's listen to him quickly. Or
regalo din yan. Yung medyas ko, regalo din. Sa buong buhay ko, alam nyo, ngayon lang ako nakakita ng ganitong klaseng creative energy. Grabe kayo. Yung mga mural, yung mga painting, lahat ng mga ginagawa niyong placard. Bilib na bilib ako sa mga placard nyo. Grabe. Oh, medic, please, medic, bigyan ng daan. Sa buong buhay ko, ngayon lang ako nakadinig ng ganitong klaseng hiyaw. Pwede ko ba marinig ulit yung inyong hiyaw?
I think it also reflects how grassroots this campaign has turned into, right? Did you imagine the Robredo campaign turning into this eventually? When she first announced in October 2021.
Well, no. Because the first time nga, parang, di ba, parang medyo, ano yung nilalabas ng mga, di ba, you know, we were all laughing at that. And yet, I think, it's the grassroots, eh.
Yeah.
I think they really believed in Vice President Robredo's message na kayong dadala nito.
Yeah.
Kumbaga, it's not a top-down.
Yeah.
It was the volunteer core.
Yeah.
No? And they believed that. And ginawa nila talagang mode of expression, yung kampanya para sa kanila. And that's what makes it authentic.
Yeah.
Kasi kanya-kanya eh. May LGBT, may ano. So it's like a million different messages, and yet they sort of coalesce, you know, and in so many ways give us more facets into the kind of campaign that the Vice President has.
Yeah. Parang yung running joke ka ng ibang tao, di ba? Parang ultimo hand sign, hindi sila magkasundo. Kasi like, I think initially the Robredo campaign wanted to stay away or at least distance itself from the Liberal Party branding kasi nga the past 6 years medyo intense din yung what you call this pagkawala ng amor towards the Liberal Party, the once ruling Liberal Party. So yung laban na hand sign, medyo parang iwas. But I think it was the volunteers and the supporters themselves who kept using it and bringing it back. Kumbaga reclaiming yung pag-brand ng dilawan or pag-twist ng dilawan into something negative. Because that used to be a fairly neutral term in Philippine politics.
Yeah, although the volunteers probably who do that, probably it's more Lenny and it's also Laban.
I was gonna say.
They've made it more generic.
Yeah.
Pinakita rin naman ng volunteers na hindi kami dilawan. You know, we've transcended this. So siguro it was that kind of confidence both in themselves and in the message that the Vice President was giving that took away the fear of using the old signs na akala nila baka would, you know, lead to brickbats and all that. So.
Right. Sophia, as the youngest person in this table, gagawin lang kitang youth representative. No, kasi malaking portion ng voters in the 2022 elections are very young. Some people see it in a negative light in that ito yung generation na, tayo yung generation na hindi natin naranasan ang martial law. Kumbaga, hindi man lang siya distant memory, wala talaga tayong kinalaman sa martial law. Kumbaga, parang nabuhay tayo post-martial law era na. How are you seeing how the youth are getting or trying to involve themselves in this election?
Right. Well, I think it's most seen in the campaign of Vice President Leni Robredo because one noticeable thing is that in places where she's not strong, it's the youth who are really mobilizing for her. And even, I think what's interesting and really surprising to me even is how there are young people who aren't even old enough to vote who are mobilizing for her. So, to me, I mean, if we're talking about how this election might change the political landscape, let's say, of the Philippines afterwards, I think that part gives me hope because, maybe this could be, maybe the response we're seeing now could be a lasting watershed, no? I think one thing maybe that might have contributed to how things are right now is a lack of maybe a very active participation of the youth in just politics in general. So that's one thing that's changing right now, no? So I think that for me is also really interesting to watch and to see.
Hindi ako sure kung sa bubble ko lang to of my own friends, no, who are my age, so nasa mid-range millennial. Pero parang I also feel like there's a lot of kumbaga parang pag-let go ng cynicism. Because I feel like a lot of people our age and older and even younger, no, parang the past 6 years under Duterte, parang unti-unting nabubuo yung cynicism siguro towards politics, towards the electoral process in a way. And not to say that si Leni Robredo lang yung kayang gumawa nun, but I think the campaign is showing that it's kind of reawakening that, or at least chipping away from the cynicism that,
I think we can't also, we have to consider also her 3 daughters.
Yeah.
They're young, they're active, they speak the language of the youth, no? And they share the sentiments, no, ng mga bata na wag masyadong polarized, we can reach out. Has is a message that young people have been telling older,
Yeah.
the older political groups, no,
Yeah.
time and again. Pangalawa, I think, dagdagan ko yung kay Sofia,
Yeah.
the amount of energy and organizing skills and perseverance that young people have shown, makikita mo to we need to consider also yung criticism nila sa mga older generation na kaya tayo nagkaganito-ganito kasi pagkatapos ng malalaking balik tayo sa ating mga lungga, no? And the Vice President said something very interesting when she went to Bago, yung final send-off. Sabi niya, ano man ang mangyari sa election na to, ituloy natin ito. So that means na while of course everybody hopes and everybody's doing their darn best to ensure that the Vice President wins, meron ng pananaw, lalo na yung kabataan, it doesn't stop here.
Yeah.
And I think John Arcilla said something rin di ba? Na it was the Vice President who said that after this, you should not go back to silence.
Yeah.
You should bantayan niyo siya, criticize niyo siya because she had said that she needs that, from citizens so that tamang-tama pa rin yung landas. And parang nag-gel itong lahat ng mga mensahe.
Actually, naalala ko lang in 2016 because I also covered the Rojas Robredo campaign. So I covered Vice President Leni Robredo when she was still running for the vice presidency. She had an event. It escapes me now where she said that. Pero parang exact words din. Sinabi niya, parang tail end na to ng 2016 campaign. Sinabi niya na kung manalo man ako, at that point, kumbaga, lumalapit na siya kay Bongbong Marcos sa vice presidential race. Kung manalo man ako, yung hinihingi niya sa supporters niya at that point was, bukod sa support, come out and vote for me. If I win, please criticize me. Please make sure that I do my job. So parang consistent din sa messaging niya. Siguro that also helps chip away from the cynicism. Di ba sinasabi niyo yung millennial, yung mga pessimistic na generation.
As a late tail-end boomer, tail-end last year of the boomer, I love to say this, I never really bought into that claim that the young people were the ones who were, kasi nakukuha yan sa mga older generations. I've always been saying, saan nila nakukuha nila yan? Sa parents nila o sa grandparents nila, who, at ang generation namin didn't have press freedom.
Yeah.
So we were captives of a single propaganda machinery, no? So hindi lang nila nakikita kung ano nangyayari. So kaya ganun ang paikot. But I think the young people, because basically, you're digital natives, kahit na maraming kasinungalingang kumakalat, merong savvy ang younger people to look for it.
Yeah.
And one time, we were, why are you doing that? They said, no, we're having fun. We don't believe in this. Yung ganon. Parang, it's like a mockery, pero the younger people actually know better. And I think younger people probably have more to do with the rise of Leni Robredo than the older ones.
Yeah, I mean the house-to-house campaigns and everything.
House-to-house
Actually,
campaign.
wala tayong Gen Z rep dito. Hindi ka Gen Z dito.
Borderline millennial Gen Z.
Ilaban natin yan. Sige, Gen Z
The
ka na rin.
movers who have been writing moving features and essays about their activities. Kikita mo sila yung estudyante sila, nagsasave sila ng baon nila para maano nila, para maiambag nila. Kasi totoo pala, wala talagang budget. Sa kanya-kanya, ambag-ambagan sila ng pera para makapagkampanya.
It's these young people, like beyond the financial resources, no, talagang their time. And these are young people who are also balancing online classes. So you literally see them sometimes naka-online class habang nasa mga meeting ng mga volunteer organizations.
Actually, I think, even, let's say, so if we're talking about the whole range of millennials, no, the working millennials, parang I think that was also felt among some employers. Again, I don't know if it's just, what I see online, our bubble, but work leaves, right? People being allowed to take work leaves so that they can campaign in this at the very last minute. I don't know about you, but I think that's something that's also new, no? This time around.
No, a lot of people I know that normally do not care about any electoral activity. They're volunteers, and I find that they're more involved in this election more than ever din.
I think one big lesson for all of us is that kung hindi man yung naabot, no, yung hindi pa na-convert nila is the amount of passion and compassion that we see. I think the compassion really and the empathy makes a difference. Because when you go to people who are, live hard scrabble lives, and you come to them and then you lecture them, they're not gonna listen to you. But if you're there, if they've seen you and maging consistent from now on, no, balik-balikan, then nakaka-identify sila talaga sa iyo. And then they don't see you as, parang feeling siguro ng iba, pupuntahan nyo lang kami dito once every 6 years, di ba?
Like when you need me,
And when you need me, and you tell me I'm bobotante, di ba? So I think malaking sea change in lessons. And I think it's working. If not now, maybe somewhere.
That's a good observation. Thankfully, people are using, or actually na-erase sa vocabulary yung bobotante. Very wrong and annoying presumption. Before we let go of our coordinators in Mindanao and Visayas, let's go back to Herbie. Herbie, ano yung mga races in Mindanao that we should be watching out for? Baka hindi masyadong familiar yung viewers natin sa mga hot or interesting races ngayon sa Mindanao.
You mean local races?
Yes.
Okay. First, Cagayan de Oro.
Yeah.
Ano to? It's a fight between two politicians actually who haven't held the mayoral post yet, no? Si Clarix Uy and Pompi Lavinia. Of course, si Clarix Uy looks like he has an edge because he got the endorsement of Moreno. However, Mr. Lavinia is also someone to watch for, no, because of the endorsement of Bambi Imano, the governor of Misamis Oriental, and Rufus Rodriguez. So it really remains to be seen, no, Cagayan de Oro. Sa Bukidnon, it looks like mas malakas pa rin ang Subiri dynasty there, and the Governor Subiri is fielding one of his sons, the present congressman now. They're fielding him. He's fielding him for the gubernatorial post. Bali nagpalitan sila, and the old Subiri is running for congressman again. Okay. So basically yon. Maraming mga places to watch for, no. Pero ito yung medyo malapit-lapit sa akin.
Thank you, Herbie. Now we go to Ryan Macasero. Ryan, bukod sa Cebu, nabanggit mo na kanina, unsa pa may mga race dira sa Visayas nga everyone should be watching out for?
Kamustang Bukod?
So, let me start with Cebu City first. Okay, importante ang Cebu City race because this is one of the last 3 years have been a time when there have been no Osmeñas in incumbents in Cebu City. So, Tommy Osmeña lost his bid for re-election then, and his wife is running this year, and if she wins, she would be the first female mayor of Cebu City since it was chartered, and she's running against Mike Rama, who took over as mayor in when Mayor Edgar Lavella died in November 2021. His running mate is Raymond Garcia, whose family owns the Sunstar Media Network, and when we were talking earlier about the Garcias, always looking to expand their influence, they have not been able to expand it, and not been able to influence Cebu City very much because of its status as an independent city. And they talked about it a lot when they were here in Cebu about the island needing to be really one Cebu. And if he wins, that could bring him closer to being mayor and would increase, the Garcia's influence even more. And then in Northern Cebu is the 5th congressional district race, which Red Durano lost in 2019 to Duke Frasco, and this is what caused the rivalry between the Duranos and the Garcias to intensify in the first place, because the Duranos have held that seat for decades since I believe the 1950s or 60s, and Duke Frasco was the first person who was able to unseat the Aderano, and he's trying to get that seat back again this year. He's running against Duke Frasco, which is the son-in-law of Governor Gwen Garcia. Um, and of course, the Cebu gubernatorial race, we have Ace Dorano, who is trying to run for provincial governor for the first time against the wildly popular Gwen Garcia. So if he is somehow able to pull off that win, that would put Dorano in a position of power beyond the 5th District of Cebu for the first time since the Marcos regime. In Bohol, we have Art Yap running again for governor. He's running for re-election of governor against Aris Aumentado. He's expected to win that race. He's seen as a very popular and very efficient governor. He has not yet endorsed any presidential bet, but his party, of course, is supporting the BBM unit, Sara Duterte tandem. That's the biggest one for the Central Visayas.
Thank you. And kang salamat, Ryan and Irby. Live from Cagayan de Oro City and Cebu City. With us now is Jairo Boledo, the reporter who covers labor leader Leody de Guzman. Jairo, kamusta naman yung meeting ni Avance ni Calyodi at ni Professor Bello nung Wednesday, May 4?
Yeah, they were actually one of the earliest tandems who had their meeting ni Avance. So, actually surprised yung nangyari kasi parang we were asking them kung kailan yung meeting ni Avance nila because other teams already announced the schedule which were usually today, yung Saturday. Pero hindi nila kami binalikan until around Tuesday na nag-post sila out of the blue na Wednesday na yung kanilang meeting ni Avance sa Quezon City. So medyo surprising siya kasi hindi nila hinold yung meeting ni Avance nila sa bailiwick ni Leody de Guzman, which is Rizal. Pero unfortunately nga rin, hindi rin talaga masyadong malakas yung ground base ni Leody de Guzman sa Rizal. So understandable na Quezon City nila hinold. Other factor during the meeting the Avance of Leody de Guzman and Walden Bello was that biglaan talaga siya, although hindi naman nila sinabi directly, but it seems that way kasi sinabay nila yon sa isang event ni Mayor Joy Belmonte. So before the meeting the Avance, there was an event of Mayor Joy Belmonte around 4 p.m., 6 p.m. yung meeting the Avance. So parang yung crowd ni Mayor Joy Belmonte, yun rin yung naging crowd nila Calyodi de Guzman. And as compared to other bets na meeting the Avance, medyo parang it's safe to say na parang less than 100 or less than 200 lang yung parang actual supporters ni Calyodi na nandoon. Others, yung description niya, pwede natin sabihin na parang mas marami pa yung nakaputi kaysa nakapula. Nakaputi kasi yung mga supporters ni Joy Belmonte, pero yung mga naka-red, which is the color na ginagamit din ni Leody de Guzman, hindi ganun karami.
Yeah. Question, Jairo. Hindi naman ganun kakonti. You know, we know that they're not the biggest of the activist blocks. And yet, meron naman talagang malaki-laki rin, lalo na yung labor component ng kanilang grupo. Paano ba to? Does that mean na hindi na talaga sila nag-mobilize ng todo-todo? Because I've seen how Leody's group can mobilize during labor fights, no? And nakakakuha rin yan ng libu-libong magmamarcha sa daan. Why this? Why maliit ang grupo nila this time?
Yeah, good question, Ma'am Inday. Actually, we were talking about that kasi during may fellow reporters covering Leody de Guzman, parang na-observe namin na mas marami pang pumunta nung campaign launch niya noong February 8 sa Bantayog ng mga Bayani. That time, may mga parang contingents pa kasi ibang labor unions, mga labor sectors na nandoon. So napuno nila yung Bantayog ng mga Bayani. It's actually somewhat a show of force for the labor sector coming together and supporting de Guzman. But unfortunately, marami na rin siguro kasing nangyari. Namely, yung pagkaka-divide mismo ng organized na labor sector we only have around 1 million organized laborers in the country, and most of which are supporting Vice President Leni Robredo, and some are supporting Bongbong Marcos. So yun po, parang nakita natin yun in the past months na even the labor sector ay hindi ganoong na-mobilize ni Walden Bello and then Leon de Guzman to entirely support them, a pro-labor tandem.
But if we were to ask you, what has Leody and Walden, what have they brought to these elections na unique talaga that can probably have, repercussions in the coming elections?
I think what they brought in these elections is that si Calyodi made a statement, especially that he claims that he's the first presidential candidate who came from the labor sector. So beyond winning, sinasabi niya naman yun, he wanted to make a statement and he wanted to make it na parang nasimulan niya kahit papaano. Hindi naman kasi si Calyodi ay delusional na parang 100% sure siyang mananalo because he also believes in somewhat the usual politics in the country where we somewhat believe in survey. We believe in survey. So siya, lagi niyang sinasabi, ang mahalaga napakita niya yung platforms niya. Ang mahalaga nakita ng mga tao na meron siyang sound platforms for the people other than beyond being a labor leader, kaya niya rin mag-lead as a person. Hindi dinala niya kakaiba dito sa presidential campaign for the last 90 days ay even wala kang masyadong machinery and platforms, can still utilize other means and avenues to share your platform. Pwede ka rin maging mabuting tao at dissenting tao even though nasa baba ka ng survey, kasi yun yung parang binabank ngayon ni Calyodi na hindi naman niya binabrag kasi hindi naman siya ganong klase ng tao, but sinasabi niya na nagkakagulo na yung ibang male candidates attacking Robredo, but he remained calm and chill lang siya, literal. So yung chill na Calyodi from yung nakilala natin na nag-mobilize sa kalsada, hanggang ngayon, yun yung dinala niya sa campaign na to. And some are saying, some people are telling him na parang kung matalo siya, baka gusto niya tumakbo ng senator kasi maganda yung chance niya na this time kasi nakilala siya on a national scale, which is the big difference between yung senatorial run niya noong 2019. So somewhat, I would say, na parang naging good introduction for Calyodi, yung 2020 presidential election on a national scale.
Although siguro, let me add, siguro from the vantage point of Leody, Walden, and Luke Espiritu, no? Na nag-trending yan si Luke, no? I think hindi pero napakahalaga sa kanila because media, were presidentiable yan eh.
Yeah.
You need to put him on equal footing with the rest of them.
Yeah.
After the first days na parang bakit hindi binibigyan ng ganong attention si Leody, na ibigay nila yung kanilang mensahe, ng alternative views nila in society. A very socialist, sabihin na natin, diretso, socialist viewpoint that otherwise would probably never have
as much
gotten that
attention.
much attention and play. No? So, I think para sa kanila, malaking victory.
And I think that's a good point that you mentioned, di ba, yung trending on Twitter, kasi lalo na ngayon in 2022, hindi siya Twitter lang. Right? I think in the worldwide scale, di ba, Twitter is basically yun yung kahit paano it somehow dictates also not so much the news agenda, pero yung direction ng culture, ng diskurso sa culture, no? So it's interesting but I think the challenge here will be like bringing it from online chatter, Twitter chatter, and their solid base na into the mainstream further.
And of course sustaining it. But I think interesting as well, it's definitely like what Inday said, it's already, you can consider it a win. Just the fact that he ran and put those ideas out on the same platform. But I think also it translated to even other races, like let's say in the Senate, going back to the Senate, you have candidates like Elmer Labog who, I think, people wouldn't have considered him if not, or he wouldn't have gotten as much visibility were it not for the fact that you had a candidate like Leody de Guzman running on the national stage
Parang-
at the level of the president.
Nabanggit ka ni Calyodi sa first 100 days interview with Maria, kumbaga the past 3 months, or the past, hindi lang 3 months, parang siguro pag-file pa lang, di ba? Equivalent siya to years of organizing. So, ang laking ang boost to the movement, and hopefully, like in the coming elections, we'll see more and more representation from ngayon, alternative pa siya na sector in politics, but hopefully we'll see that more in the mainstream, quote-unquote. We are covering today the different meeting the avances of the different presidential and vice presidential candidates. For more updates, you can visit our homepage, rappler.com. We have updates from the Robredo campaign in Makati, the Unity meeting the Avance in Parañaque, Isko Moreno's campaign rally in Manila, and Senator Pacquiao's final salvo in General Santos City. Pinag-usapan natin kanina yung meeting the Avance nga ni Calyodi. Itong si Jairo kasi tawid kampanya din to. Kabaro ko yan sa mga tawid kampanya serye dito sa Rappler. He also covered the not meeting the Avance, but grand rally of Vice President Leni Robredo in Naga City yesterday. Was it, Jairo? Tama?
Yeah, actually nasa Naga pa rin ako until
Kahapon
today.
lang pala yung final rally ni VP Leni sa Naga City. Of course, she hails from Naga City. The late Jessie Robredo was mayor of Naga City. Kamusta yung meeting the Avance, Jairo? Kumbaga ito yung send-off na ng Naga, di ba? Kay VP Leni ahead of tonight's meeting the Avance, and then of course babalik siya sa Camsor to vote later. How was the meeting the Avance? What was the mood in her final rally in her hometown?
Actually, yung grand rally ni Vice President Leni Robredo, originally it was packaged as something na meeting the Avance, but I think they changed it to naibigay yung title na meeting the Avance talaga to Makati na ito, yung today na meeting the Avance ni VP Leni. So, kahapon si Vice President Leni Robredo at ang kanyang running mate na si Kiko Pangilinan ay nagkaroon ng 3 grand rallies sa 3 different provinces sa Bicol. It's unusual for the Robredo campaign to do that kasi sa isang araw, usually, ang schedules kasi niyan ay yung grand rally sa gabi and then mini rallies
Parang
in between.
rallies, yes.
Yeah, o parang mga multi-sectoral thingy, dialogue. Pero kahapon, nag-all out talaga yung Bicol. Hindi sila pumayag na mini rallies or sectoral. As in, talagang I think yung phrase na ginagamit lagi na parang ubos kung ubos, gabos kung gabos. Lagi ko siyang narinig kahapon. Hindi ko alam ibig sabihin niya, pero I think something like parang todo yung suporta. I don't know.
Buhos na lahat.
Not hindi ko alam. But, ayun,
Ano yung
something like that.
Kamusta naman yung pag-interpret mo sa speech ni VP Leni na in straight Bicolano? Hindi, joke lang. Hindi yun actual na tanong, Jairo. Hindi, pero napansin nga natin kasi I also covered both Vice President Leni Robredo and the Uniteam campaign in Iloilo, no? Na parang talagang yung isang rally niya sa Iloilo, dapat small rally lang siya. Pero hindi namin napuntahan kasi we had to go to the Uniteam rally. Pero medyo malaki yung sa La Paz. Nagulat din ako when I saw the pictures after. It was supposed to be a mini send-off for the house-to-house campaign. Kasi I think, and the Vice President has spoken about this na, I think in Cebu, I heard her talk about how they always had the option to just focus on the big cities and hold grand rallies there. But personally, she wants to go to smaller rallies. Even though if you think about it, right? Like yung time, the effort, the resources you pour into traveling to small islands. Like in Cebu, she went to Bantayan Island pa. Parang siya lang ata yung kandidato in 2022 rather, who flew to Bantayan. So, andun din siguro, swak din dun sa sa messaging niya, di ba, na sa laylayan, no city is too small, ganun.
Kahapon, nag-start siya sa Albay, yung grand rally niya sa Albay, nasa 50,000 din yung dumating. Puro kabataan, pero surprisingly, dahil home turf niya, talagang marami rin yung mga may edad, yung mga senior citizens. Pero ang hinabangan talaga kahapon umaga ay yung pag-endorse or pagpakita ng suporta ni Cheese Escudero. But I could say na until the end, Escudero played it safe kasi hindi man lang nga siya pumunta physically or personally rather doon sa rally. Nag-send lang siya ng video message. But the entire, I think the Escudero clan, yung mga local politicians in the Sorsogon province went there naman and nagpakita ng suporta kay Vice President Leni Robredo. And then tumalon si VP Leni to Albay. na hinost pa ni Representative Salceda, 100,000 yung pumunta doon. And then in Naga, 306,000 yung pumunta ng mga Bicolanos. Alam niyo, parang 1 p.m. pa lang. Sobrang puno na yung buong Magsaysay Avenue doon sa kahabaan ng sa parang corner ng Peña Francia. Malapit doon sa Biggs, yung restaurant na favorite niya. So kahapon, mapapansin natin sa speeches ni Vice President Leni Robredo na lagi niyang ina-amplify yung campaign ni Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Lagi naman niyang pinabanggit si Senator Kiko, pero kahapon, medyo bago yung speech niya. At one point, nung nasa Sorsogon, sinabi niya na nakakahiya naman kung siya lang malaki yung boto sa Bicol and not her running mate Pangilinan. So, ayun, yun yung mga notable doon. Tapos, yung pinaka-mood sa Bicol, it was more of a homecoming rather than a send-off.
Yeah.
Kasi para sa kanila, feeling nila victory party na yun. Tapos kahapon, katabi ko yung mga matatanda. First time ko lang nakakita ng medyo may edad na talaga na sobrang dami nila. Because they were shouting the whole night, asking for, parang calling Robredo's name. So, parang superstar talaga siya at sobrang at home siya, si VP Lenny, doon sa Naga rally niya. Siyempre bukod sa doon sila nakatira, iba yung mood ng mga tao. Talagang they were there to support VP Lenny. Some of the supporters nga ay hindi from Naga, yung iba from Camarines Norte, some were from farther provinces pa sa Bicol. And then, yung speech ni VP Lenny, full Bicolano siya. So I understand, very mga 5% lang ng Bicolano kasi medyo mababaw yung Kamsur, Kamsur Bicol, medyo malapit sa Bisaya and Tagalog. Pero hindi ko talaga naiintindihan entirely. Nakausap ko lang yung locals kapag merong hindi ko maintindihan. Nakatranslate, nakikisuyo akong translate. But yeah, ang ganda ng speech niya, yung three speeches niya, particularly the Naga speech. I would say it's one of the best speeches so far kasi sobrang natural. Tapos iba si VP Lenny kapag Bicolano yung niya, yung ginagamit yung language, nag-iibang tao siya. As in, ma-joke siyang tao, ma-jolly siya. Siguro dahil mas comfortable siya sa language. And then yun, nag-focus yung speech niya sa pagte-thank you sa mga Bicolano, lahat ng ginawa ng mga Bicolano para sa kanya. So, I think confident si VP Lenny going to MBA today because of the love of Bicolanos na pinakita sa kanya.
Siyempre kasi that's where it all began, no? Yung unexpected na political career ni Leni Robredo. She never imagined running for any seat, much less the presidency. Thank you, Jairo. He's live from Camarines Sur, reporting. He covered the the grand rally of Vice President Leni Robredo yesterday in Naga City. Now let's check the uni team meeting the Avance. Unfortunately, medyo hirap ang signal dun as you would expect from most meeting the Avances of most grand rallies of the unit team. But we do have updates from my ka-unit team tandem, Lian Buwan, who is in Parañaque right now. I want to zoom in on one of her updates dito sa unit team rally. Vloggers get special mention dito sa unit team rally. Quote, yung exact quote ay pagbati sa mga vlogger ang mga tunay nagbabalita. Lian has mga tunay na nagbabalita. Napansin ko rin to earlier when I was covering the unit team rallies, no? Parang kita mo talaga, and it's easy to identify them because they literally wear shirts that say vloggers. Like, hindi ka mawawala, di ba? Kitang-kita mo talaga kung sino sila. Lian wrote a report about this nga, how Marcos has been treating the media. What does this say about Bongbong Marcos Jr., who is leading based on opinion polls? Like, what does this say about him as possible president?
Hindi naman bago sa atin, no? I mean, President Duterte started it, that deliberate attempts to erode the credibility of professional media, no? And present the likes of Mocha and the other vloggers pa sila dati, hindi pa vloggers. Si Mocha pa lang ang medyo vlogger talaga noon, as the alternative source of news, no? Tunay na balita, which is basically what they want to hear. Amplified 10 times by Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Ang siguro ang startling nito, of course, we've seen how many journalists like Lian, no, talagang papahirapan. Pero ang pinaka-classic sa Cagayan de Oro. And dahil nga...
Yun old school technique yun.
At
Hindi mo
dahil
i-invite.
mga veteranong matatapang na journalist ang sa Cagayan, hindi sila nakalusot doon. No? Talagang the Cagayan media went to town with it. Deliberately did not invite the seniors. And ang sabi nga ng local spokesperson or local coordinator was because they wanted people who hindi makulit, na hindi natanungin ang natanong na dati. In short, ang buong ambience ng Marcos communication strategy is makontento kayo sa sinabi ko.
Ito lang, hanggang dito lang tayo.
Dito lang kayo. At kaya ang mga vloggers, ang kanyang inaano, dahil ito yung sinabi ko, ito yung i-amplify nyo, nobody questions or nobody gets that much of an opportunity to question him, or raise uncomfortable questions.
And it's funny that they raised na hindi na uulitin yung mga tanong. Kasi the thing is, kahit inuulit yung tanong, hindi kasi siya sinasagot. Yung experience ko personally sa like trying to get a chance interview with, it's not as intense as Lian, fortunately for me, but it's quite daunting, like kasi normally, 'di ba, parang minsan kuyugan din naman talaga, pero hindi yung talagang ibo-box out ka at talagang hindi ka papansinin or mamaya-maya may mararamdaman ka na lang na likod pushing you away from the scrum or what could have been a scrum sa campaign na ito. And also like let's talk about also na ano ba yung so what? So what if you say that mainstream media, quote-unquote, whatever mainstream media means, right? So what if you say that mainstream media is biased? So what if you say that the vloggers report the real news, quote-unquote? What does that do to democracy? Or what does it do to a country, in a way?
Well, it sends a message that he will be very particular and very... that communications channels under Marcos government will probably be even more restricted than it has been now, and it's not just going to be one or two outfits, but probably all other outfits unless you toe the line.
And aside from being restricted, well, related to being restricted, it reduces the checks and balances, right? Because we go back to what journalists do and what sets them apart from vloggers. There is a process of verification, there is accountability if you make mistakes. Like in Rappler, for example, right, we always have a correction page, and that's not part of the discipline of. That's what makes journalism a discipline, right? That's not present for vloggers. So, restriction of the space for media to report, also of course access, and that I think contributes to the reduction of checks and balances.
Yeah, and I think it also, like, kung nagtataka yung mga tao kung bakit gumagana yung unity na minsan pinagtatawanan ng mga tao na ng unity na message, gumagana siya kasi there's no opportunity to, kumbaga, not corner them, but to ask the valid questions, right? Na parang, sir, sana yung plataforma natin? Or like, they have announced, kumbaga, their platforms through videos, not through text, not through a document. Pero parang we haven't really had an opportunity to ask, kunwari, like, okay, these are your plans for agriculture, how do you intend to fund it? These are your plans for energy, how do you intend to fund it? Like the hard questions aren't there because we can't even ask them, right? So
I think also, this whole thing happening, of course, in the kind of internet we have right now, with social media, it might even exacerbate the whole disinformation landscape, because then, let's say if this is the way things are going to be, you will have the platform and the machinery of, let's say, the state amplifying these things, right? So again, it just takes away more space from an already dwindling landscape.
Very interesting yung New York Times article na kasi sinasabi, okay, is it misinformed population and the architects of lies, the ones who actually create and spread disinformation? Very interesting na tinatanong ang ilang vloggers, hindi ba ganito? It doesn't matter. Ganun eh. As in, Dati kasi ang tingin natin, baka hindi lang nila alam. Now we know.
It's
Alam
they
nila.
know, but they actually think that it doesn't matter. We are going to push through with whatever, advances the interests of our principal.
Also because it's to their interest because you earn a lot from it.
Yeah.
Oo nga eh.
Then
Nalula ako.
5 to 10 times the minimum wage.
I also did not. I didn't think din na ganun yung range na
I was
pera
like,
from it.
whoa.
Yeah. Let's go back to the live updates page of the Marcos Duterte meeting, the Avance. Yung nagpo-perform ngayon actually si Lethora. This is a relatively new band, but I think their first claim to fame was creating the rock version of Bagong Lipunan. Sa mga mas bata, siguro na ngayon lang na-expose sa kantang yan. Iisipin nyo lang siya as a campaign jingle or campaign song ng Marcos Duterte campaign. But that was used as a propaganda tool back in martial law. No? Siguro isa rin yun sa pinaka jarring. Siguro when unang sabak mo sa Marcos, sa Unity Team campaign na parang, oh wow. So this is fully part of how they're communicating, how they're...
And it's deliberate.
Yeah.
Ito yung brazen. You know? It says that na hindi lang na just to apologize, hindi lang sila apologies for what happened before. Talagang nagsasabi na what happened before was right.
Yeah.
And we're going to serve it up to you guys.
Yeah.
Parang yun ang
It's that authoritarian-ish promise of parang babalik tayo sa dati. Kung ano mang dati na yan, medyo vague tayo, basta mas maganda siya, maniwala na lang kayo. We have live updates from Parañaque dito sa live updates page ng Marcos Duterte meeting, the Avance. We also have links for live updates to the pages per candidate ng mga iba't ibang meeting, the Avance. Again, Vice President Leni Robredo in Makati, the Unity Team Alliance in Parañaque. We have Isko Moreno in Manila and Manny Pacquiao and General Santos. Once that goes live, the links are now flashed on screen. So if you wanna tune into a specific campaign or gusto mo mag-campaign hopping tonight, why not? Jump ka na lang per campaign para mapanood mo yung live stream, saka updates and context din from our reporters on the field. Going back to this, no, and we have the live updates page of the Marcos and Duterte meeting, the Avance. Going back to Bagong Lipunan, this is interesting to me kasi Ralph Rivas has actually written about this, like Marcos Jr. has been evoking images of his father. But in the campaign, he never speaks about his father. He does not explicitly say na let's go back to the martial law era or yung mga whatever ng martial law era, mga gains, or sometimes the central candidates do. Specifically, you'll have Larry Gadon or Marcoleta from time to time, parang making references to the Marcos years and how falsely grand they were. But Marcos Jr. himself actually does not evoke or does not directly evoke it. But then you have Umagang Kay Ganda. Na siguro sa mga kahenerasyon ko yung pagkaalam natin, morning show yun. Pero Marcos era song din siya from the martial law years. How does that, not to age you, but how does that make you feel? How did you initially react when you first heard of these songs and even the shirt jack, right? And the peace sign, the victory sign being used in the campaign.
Umagang Kay Ganda, well, that was really a Metropop Fest winner. So, medyo, at maganda naman talaga ang kanta. So, I'm like, okay.
Sige.
But, Bagong Lipunan, that really jarred, and more than jarred me. The first time I heard it, talaga I felt like cold water. Parang binuhusan ako ng malamig na tubig. And I said like, nung una parang hindi ako makapaniwala na actually, yun talaga ang gagamitin mo. But apparently talagang ginamit nila. And the double-pronged yung kanyang hindi niya kailangan magsalita eh. All Marcos needs to be is smile his cute smile. Call on memories of his mother. Sometimes he does that. She's not here, the missing Imelda, because she's frail. We would rather, she would be here. She's watching all of you. May maganon siya, but yes, not his father.
Yeah.
Because he's still trying rin to distance, that may dictatorship na He leaves that to other people.
Yeah.
Well, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. apparently has a habit of letting other people do the dirty work. So that's typical of him talaga na, you know, I'm here, I'll be cute, I'll smile,
Yeah.
I'll appeal to unity, and iba na yung paatake ko, iba na yung, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Tsaka ano din siya ha, hindi lang si Marcos Jr., even Sara Duterte, she will mention her father in that ipapatuloy. Kasi continuity candidates nga sila. In effect, both of them are continuity candidates na of the Duterte administration, even though President Duterte said he will not endorse a presidential candidate. Ganun na rin yun. Parang in effect, may endorsement na rin si Bongbong Marcos by virtue of being the running mate of Sara Duterte, no? They never, like, Sara Duterte never actually, hanggang dun lang yung pag-evoke niya sa tatay niya. Pero makikita mo naman sa bit-bit ng mga supporters, portrait nila, tapos nasa likod yung classic na yung namatay na, although buhay pa si President Duterte, yung mukha nila, tapos sa likod, mukha ng tatay nila. So parang, yun din yung draw for a lot of the supporters, I believe.
actually, kahit na hindi pa mag-endorse si Duterte, you know, he said a lot, you know. But Sara is canny eh. Every time na sumampa si Sara sa stage, dala-dala niya si Papa, si Daddy niya eh. So, you know, nagpapasalamat si Duterte. So it's like, kahit ano sabihin mo, it's like a Duterte rally. Like, you know, for keeping the faith. So like, you know, it's the end of his term and they've been keeping the faith. So implicit sa mensahe na itong kasama ko. And then she says, you know, step back, ang senior, ang paunahin. So,
this has the blessing of the Duterte brand.
Yeah, and as Jalai mentioned earlier, you know, short of any explicit endorsement, supporters of Duterte already support Marcos, Bongbong Marcos and Sara. So, I mean, majority of them are already with them.
Right. Actually, Paul, ulit yung sinasabi yun dati, before we go, that is Isko Moreno making his entrance at his meeting the Avance in Tondo, Manila. Pinag-usapan din kanina, di ba, yung push ni Mayor Isko, ang sinasabi niya ngayon, umaasa sila sa silent majority. Kung totoo ba yun or guni-guni lang ba yun in the context of Philippine politics, we'll find out on May 9. But that's the Manila Mayor now making his entrance. Again, sa Tondo yan, malapit lang kung saan siya lumaki, actually, in Manila. He's also the outgoing mayor of Manila, the capital of the Philippines, of course. Marami nagsasabi na dapat ata si Yorme tumakbo pa ng isang term. Although pinag-usapan din natin ni July earlier, di ba, na you also can't blame him kasi his survey numbers were doing so well in the very, very early surveys ahead of the official filing pa lang of candidacies. Medyo mataas yung ranking ni Mayor Isko Moreno. He's joined here by, medyo hindi kita, but he's joined by, of course, his Senate slate, his vice presidential candidate. Who is the okay. And his usual, parang kumbaga package deal na yan, usually yung mga kasama niya, no? Earlier, we saw Mocha Uson, the blogger, na Duterte supporter turned government official, na ngayon ay supporter na ni Mayor Isko.
Oo, merong Duterte
factions,
no? na naka-Isko.
Yeah. I think in the beginning, Mayor Moreno was absolutely trying to both the Duterte vote as well as siguro yung mga hindi rin maka-Duterte. No? Parang, I don't know how you could do that in a politics that's so divided and, you know, clear yung lines generally, no? Pero that was what he was hoping for. And he's hoping for the so-called silent majority or yung third wave. Siguro kung magkapareho ba yun, yung groups na yun, to win the 2022 elections. Hindi pa siya nagsalita, no? In-introduce pa lang siya. Okay. We have links for live updates, for the live update pages of each candidate's meeting the Avance. So bukod sa rally ni Mayor Moreno sa Manila, we have updates from the Uniteam rally in Parañaque and the meeting the Avance of Vice President Leni Robredo and Kiko Pangilinan in Makati. Also, the meeting the Avance of Senator Manny Pacquiao in General Santos City. The links are being flashed on screen para mapuntahan nyo. Kung gusto nyo panoorin lahat, or may gusto kayong panoorin specifically na live updates page, pwede kayong pumili dyan. Kung gusto nyo mag-shift from tab to tab, kasi gusto nyo panoorin lahat, why not? If you're watching, again, we are covering the different meeting the avances of the different candidates in the 2022 elections, the candidates seeking the presidential and vice presidential posts. in 2022. Who is speaking now? Sino yan? Medyo hindi kita.
JV.
Oh, it's JV. Okay. Again, we are watching on screen. Naka-inset ngayon yung meeting de Avance ni Mayor Isko Moreno. Now oh, yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Let's talk quickly about the ejercitos, no? Again, na-mention natin sila kanina, di ba? And Sophia has been following the senatorial race. Again, unfortunately, it's quite hard to cover the senatorial race when there's a presidential race because most of your resources and efforts are put into the presidential candidates. Si JV Ejercito trying for a comeback. Isa pang nagka-comeback ang kanyang kapatid na si Jinggoy Estrada, who is a Uniteam candidate. They are one of 4 pairs of family members?
One of 4 pairs of potential family
Who might
members
just
who
make
might make a third of the Senate. And just a quick point, no, if JV and Jinggoy manage to both get into the top 12 of the Senate, it'll also signal their return to Philippine politics of the Estradas after, of course, their big loss in 2019.
2019 was quite jarring for them. Now we circle back to our Rappler investigative editor, Miriam Grace Go, and of course, Inday right here beside me. Gigi and Inday, let's pull out beyond 2022. Nabanggit na rin natin in passing kanina yung dynasties. Yun yung naging constant, for better or worse, amid the changing political landscape, tsaka yung changing politics mismo in the Philippines. How do you see this after 2022?
Oh, I mean, sa Senate lang They'll be more entrenched than ever. Kaya ngayon sinabi natin kay Marcos, kay Lenny, kay Iskong manalo, ang panalong-panalo dito, ang political dynasties. When we were doing our series, talagang nalulula ako You know, I knew that, you know, dynasties ruled.
But when you lay it out,
when you lay it out, I'm like, 12,
Yeah.
10, like, you know, and strangely, some of the poorest places in this country have the most, ang dami nila na mga pamilya doon. So,
yeah. Actually, Dean Ronald Mendoza said something really interesting as well. No? You know, we're also so divided because we're so unequal.
Yeah.
And it's a factor of how strong political dynasties are. And if we go back to the Senate, if you think about any anti-dynasty law being passed, what are the chances of that happening?
Not.
We haven't even talked about the House.
Exactly.
In previous
67%, I think, right?
In previous Congresses, and malamang in this...
probably more now,
Because it 1% every year.
And then you have the added factor, ang daming problema. Nung 2019 observation nga, na even party lists, yung party list groups ngayon, a lot of them are actually... Well, they claim to endorse, represent a marginalized group. But if you actually look at the nominees, they're not from the said marginalized group they claim to represent. And in fact, they're either businessmen or political dynasties.
Natulungan sila dun sa Supreme Court,
Yeah.
No, na you don't need, si Mikey yun Arroyo, di ba?
Yeah.
You don't need to be a security guard to represent the security guards. In so many words, no?
Yeah.
And, well, there's that. So, all of them, no, the dynasties talaga, and they're playing it well,
Yeah.
In so many places, unopposed sila.
Yeah.
You know,
which means you need 1 vote to win.
Yeah.
So wala silang...
Crazy.
So mas kailangan sila ng national candidates than they need the national candidates.
And then usually these candidates who are unopposed, dala din yan ng pre-filing negotiations. Sometimes with another dynasty, mag-uusap sila na okay, we won't oppose each other, but I'll give you this, I'll give you this district, I'll take this city. Ang lungkot, i-verbalize.
But very interesting. Sa Ilocos Norte, no, the only reason why Rudy Fariñas is running is because yung usapan nila dati, pag narinig mo siya na nagsasalita, ang usapan kasi namin, wag nyo nang galawin si Ria. Hindi na ako, magre-retire na ako, hindi ko na gagalawin. So parang, walang pretensions. Hati tayo, dito kami.
Hindi na nga siya, at this point, hindi na siya unspoken. Explicit siya na.
Explicit siya talaga na. And the same thing in Negros, no? Dalawang magkaibang block, united. So wala siyang kalaban. except for a few na hindi nila ma-unite yung kanilang kanya-kanyang mga manok. So sinabi nila, o sige, so na libre dyan sa isang lugar. But basically lahat, halos unopposed. Kung meron mang lumutang independent na hindi mo kilala, so wala silang, sa totoo lang, wala silang masyadong gastos itong election na to.
Yeah. Gigi, so pinag-uusapan natin ngayon hindi pala rise, the solidification, the further entrenchment of political dynasties. And of course, yung kakambal nito ay patuloy na mag-weaken yung political parties. What effects will the 2022 campaign have in the long term sa parang, ano ba to? Parang pointless effort na ba to strengthen political parties in the Philippines? Like, what do we do now?
I think there's no political party system to weaken in the first place. July pointed it out earlier. Mahina talaga. Practically, wala tayong party system. If our definition of a party system is people become members, they run for elections because based on a particular platform or a sector you're representing, doon ka sa partido na yan. Wala tayong ganun eh. But the good side of it is something I've been saying every election is dapat makikita natin yung advantage and power of local organizations or of organizing locally. I always say, wala namang tunay na national parties. Yung mga Lakas, PDP, Laban, they are actually parang in paper, national party, but kanino sila nagdedepende sa machinery? Actually, dun sa mga local politicians na kaalyado nila. At kung may local na partido, yung kaalyado nila na ganoon. So yun, it's really strength, parang the power and advantage of organizing locally or of local political parties. Kasi makikita mo yun, hindi lang naman dun sa mga nakarehistro na accredited political parties. We also saw that dun sa volunteer movement ni VP Robredo. Yung every province merong kang Robredo People's Council. That was an equivalent of a political party. Diba? May leaders, may volunteers na strategize, nagde-deliver, warm bodies. Yun eh, kakatulad yun noon. Parang so na-strengthen yun. And if only for that, let's look at it in a positive way na pwede tong beginnings of actually strengthening real political parties. The challenge lang is you will have to sustain the initiative after the elections.
Which is easier said than done, no? Just a few seconds ago on the live stream of Vice President Leni Robredo's meeting the Avance was Catriona Gray. Nag-intersect yung past and current lives ko. Former Miss Universe title holder. Again, parang nakikita mo rin, no, dahil nga walang machinery or walang maayos na network to lean on itong mga political parties at the end of the day, you rely on the local allies. Parang nagiging, in a way, nagiging parallel group itong celebrity power that they're leaning in on, no, bukod sa volunteers, no. Now performing si Yeng Constantino naman, I think she's been performing in a lot of Vice President Robredo's rallies across the Philippines.
Yung celebrities, yun ang tinatawag na kung sa organizing pa, ito yung sweep eh. You know? And then once you have them, then it's up to you to organize them, you know? It's up to you to mobilize them and to sustain the interest in the cause, which is the Vice President.
Ann Curtis.
Oh, Ann Curtis.
Oh, and Ann Curtis.
This is her first.
Okay, this will be her first time to come out in this election. I'm not sure if she's been
Although
campaigning.
she's tweeted, you know.
Yeah, but
social
social
media,
first
but it's
na
her first.
pagsampa sa campaign
Sa
rally.
stage.
Oo, sa stage ni Vice President. Kumakanta si Ann Curtis, of course.
We should listen to this, right? Ann Curtis singing.
Can we volume up this a bit? Duet. Sa duet with Yeng Constantino.
Problema ay tinatangay ka. Tumingin ka lang sa langit.
Again, for the people who are watching this and who are not familiar with Ann Curtis, although I don't know how you wouldn't know who Ann Curtis is, she's one of the biggest, hindi lang celebrities but endorsers in the Philippines. I remember talking to friends in marketing and in advertising about her. Na she's also one of the celebrities na she's both aspirational and relatable because obviously siya nakaaangat siya sa buhay pero parang even for the masses relatable figure siya. So I mean I think that's been also what they're hoping for na these top celebrities who are also top endorsers. So we talk about Ann Curtis, Vice Ganda, Angel Locsin, no? Parang nabanggit ka ni July kanina na ang mga politicians in the Philippines, in a way, they're brands, right? And you want to get these top endorsers to vouch for your brand in hopes of, hopefully converting the undecided or convincing the undecided or even converting those who had no intentions of voting for you.
Daniel Padilla and...
I think they're also there, kung tama ba. But we'll give you more updates. Again, if you want updates sa meeting the Avance ni Vice President Leni Robredo, bukod sa live stream, meron din tayong updates. Makikita nyo yung link sa homepage ng Rappler. Bukod sa meeting the Avance ni Vice President Leni Robredo, we're also covering the meeting the Avance of the Uniteam Alliance, also sa campaign ni Mayor Isko Moreno, and of course kay Senator Manny Pacquiao in General Santos City. The only meeting the Avance that's not happening in Metro Manila tonight. Okay, may pa-high note pa si Ann Curtis dyan.
Kaya relatable si Anne eh. Because she can laugh at herself.
Actually.
Diba, running joke niya yan, di ba, yung kanto niya.
Kasi nagka-concert series siya dati, di ba? May entertainment references pa tayo ngayon sa coverage natin ng meeting the Avance. Gigi, we talked about this briefly kanina, no? Yung after, kasi parang I personally haven't seen this kind of volunteer network tap during a presidential election. Even kahit nung kay Duterte, although medyo intense din yun, yung number of volunteers that showed up for the campaign of Rodrigo Duterte in 2016, parang the scale na volunteer networks basically fueling a presidential campaign. Anong tingin mo after this? Like what next? Whether Vice President Robredo wins or loses, like what's next for the RPCs around the country?
Pinag-usapan namin ito ni Inday sa isang nakaraan na episode ng News Break Chat, na ito, yun nga, please i-sustain ito, yung people's movement. Kasi after the election, for one, at least sa localities nyo, ito yung beginning steps for ordinary people to be able to challenge the dynasties. May organisasyon ka ang organisasyon, and in most areas, makikita mo na ang hindi sumusuporta kay Robredo ay yung mga dynasties. So, kitang-kita mo na nasa magkabilang side yung volunteer movement saka yung makinarya ng dynasties. So, pag sa local, nagkaroon ka ng races in the midterm, for example, dalawang magkabanggayan na partido, di ba, ng grupo, pang-challenge. Pangalawa, sa local natin, nasa local government code yan na dapat may sectoral representatives sa local legislative bodies natin. Isa yan sa mga tinatry din i-capture ng mga dynasties, no, na katulad lang ng party list natin pero sa local na version, inuupuan ng mga kamag-anak kahit hindi sectoral representatives. These people's councils, sila yung pwedeng mag-push at mag-demand na yung mga seats sa local legislative bodies ibigay sa tunay na representante ng sektor. Nabago na yung dynamics Whether nga manalo si VP Robredo or hindi, na ipakita ng puwersa ng volunteers na they are a voice and a force to reckon with. Kailangan silang pakinggan. Kung wala kayong pakialam sa national, at least if you are a wise local politician, you would know better than to ignore yung local movement na nangyari sa iyong probinsya o sa iyong syudad because of this campaign.
Alam mo, naalala ko lang, itong grassroots na mag-organize ka ng not necessarily political people, ito yung dream ng Liberal Party coming off the 2016 elections.
That's true.
It took them a while to even figure it out, and I don't think they actually ever were able to activate it. So itong mga Robredo's People's Council na to, parang more or less, ito yung nagiging totoo na yung dream ng Liberal Party coming off the loss of Mar Rojas in 2016. So, 6 years.
Actually, way before the Liberal Party in 2016, no? Jesse Robredo, under the local government code, iyan talaga, nung naupo siya as mayor ng Naga, ito yung provision ng local government code na sineryoso niyang magkatotoo sa kanyang lokalidad. And for the longest time, even before the Liberal Party became aware of this advocacy by 2016, pinupush na to, nagiging sinasite na as model, sinasite na among the best practices yung ginagawa ng Naga about people's representation in the council.
We tend to forget about that din. Or
Because that's one of the reasons he got the Magsaysay prize, di ba? Yung ano na yun. So, at ano yun, tama si Gigi dun eh. Kung ikaw local politician ka, local power, medyo manginginig ka konti sa nakitang volunteerism. Kasi here is a chance to break the old utang na loob cycle, no? Na kailangan ka namin, so now, pay me back. Ganon. So ito, baka pwedeng mag-break. Ituloy na lang talaga, who knows what happens in 3 years. Kahit lang sa pakonti-konti. No?
Or at least key cities muna, or key provinces, and then, I was gonna say scale it up, but then sobrang scaled up na at this point yung RPC. Like, they're very active. Like, in the few campaigns that I've tawid kampanya ko whenever I cover Uniteam, and then nagkataon na may rally din ang Robredo campaign a few days apart from the Uniteam rally. Parang you really see how involved this group of volunteers are. No? Minsan nga parang etcetera na lang yung local allies ni Vice President Robredo at ni Kiko Pangilinan. Parang they just show up. Well, that's an exaggeration. Hindi naman. Parang tumutulong din naman sila. Pero in a lot of ways, di ba? Parang it's the People's Council that takes charge. So that's definitely a movement na sana wag sayangin din, no matter what happens on May 9.
Alam mo, what's special about this volunteer movements kasi? May kaisipan kasi tayo na yung the best and the brightest in one's locality, they always just go to Manila or go abroad at wala akong pakialam kasi madumi ang politika sa locality. Pero dito sa mga people's movement ngayong 2022, nakita mo, may pakialam ako sa province ko, mag-organize ako. May pakialam ako sa syudad ko, mag-donate ako, mag-volunteer ako. That's a shift sa thinking ng mga locals na dapat din na ay masustain. Pangalawa, yung sinabi mo kanina na dati nakadepende lahat sa politiko, no, for help. Ngayon nakita mo yung sa mga rally na nagugutom ako, so may magbibigay sa akin ng pagkain. Nauuhaw ako, may magbibigay sa akin ng tubig. Naiinitan ako, may magbibigay sa akin ng sombrero during the rally. Yung mga tao, parang nila large scale mo yung pagtulong sa kapitbahay. I'm taking care of you. I'm looking after you. So wala tayong pakialam dun sa mga traditional politicians na pinapabayaan tayo or tumutulong lang sa atin kapag liligawan yung boto natin. We're taking care of each other. Isang malaking isang malaking assurance sa ordinaryong botante na I don't have to be at the mercy of the traditional politicians if I need something. Because why? May volunteer lawyer tayo sa People's Council, tutulungan na kanyang balang araw. May volunteer doctor tayo sa People's Council, tutulungan tayo niyan. Nabawasan yung power ng local politicians sa mga ordinaryong residente.
Siyempre, the RPCs are now focused on mobilizing for May 9 and making sure people actually do come out to vote. But it's interesting to see what will happen beyond May 9, like how things will play out for the different people's council. Again, hindi ito consolidated kasi na actually, parang RPC yung tawag sa kanila, pero iba-ibang personalities heading these councils across the country. On screen now is actress Angel Locsin at the Makati Avenue rally of Vice President Leni Robredo. Ito si Angel Locsin actually, I think based on a Pulse Asia survey from last year, she is considered one of the top endorsers, politically bukod sa product endorsements. Parang she is considered based on the survey, one of the top endorsers for a political personality in the Philippines right now. Kasabay niya si Chris Aquino, of course. But she did endorse Vice President Robredo during the Tarlac rally, but she hasn't been active since because of health issues as well. So again, Angel Locsin live in Makati right now. As of 6:30 p.m., the rescue team and organizers of Vice President Robredo and Kiko Pangilinan's meeting, the Avance, estimate the crowd to have reached 450,000 people. Again, 450,000 people. Yun yung crowd estimate ngayon sa Makati, kung saan yung meeting de Avance ni Vice President Leni Robredo at Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Wala pa tayong estimate for the other rallies so far. Ngayon naman on screen si Isa Calzado, another actress. And
Bumalik si Anne.
More actresses coming on screen, on stage rather. Let's listen to this a little bit. Oh, it's the Darnas. Sorry, hindi ko na
Darnas.
Jane De Leon, she will be playing Darna in the upcoming adaptation ng ABS-CBN. Si Iza Calzado, trivia, di ba? Kasi dating entertainment ako for Rappler. Iza Calzado always wanted to play Darna. The role wasn't given to her when she was still signed with a different station. But she will be playing, kumbaga, the OG Darna's mother in the upcoming ABS-CBN series. Unless they change her role, pero as far as I know, yun yung last na release ng ABS-CBN. So yun. Let's listen to the three actresses speaking right now in Makati.
Hindi tayo titigil hanggat hindi nararating ang minimithi nating gobyernong tapat.
Sa isang tumindig, libo-libo ang nakikinig. Gumising tayong isang umaga, lumalakas ang ating pwersa. Ang pag-asa, abot kamay na!
Ngayong gabi, mga minamahal kong mga volunteers, samahan niyo po kami. Samahan niyo po kaming bigkasin ang ating panata sa lahat ho ng mga nagmahal sa bayan, sa mga lumaban para sa tama, samahan niyo po kami sa ating panata.
I can leave.
Ito ang panata ng Pilipinong nagmamahal at lumalaban.
Maaari ho ba kaming mag-request sa inyo na ulitin
kay Vice President Robredo at Senator Kiko Pangilinan. I recognize a few people who have hosted the different rallies of the Vice President and of the Senator across the country. Hello, Mela Habihan. Nakita kita kanina paakyat ng stage. Speaking of the volunteers, ito rin mga volunteers rin to na mga nagpo-perform, nagpo-host, nag-organize ng mga rally ni VP Leni Robredo. Hindi madaling feat yun. Ang intense ng logistical coordination for these rallies. Again, that's live from Makati, the meeting de Avance of Vice President Leni Robredo and Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Wala pa si Vice President Robredo at si Senator Pangilinan. I think they're expected to speak in a few minutes pa. But if you want to catch them later on when they do speak, we have links for live updates pages of each candidate's meeting the Avance. Links are now flashed on our screen, or you can go to the Rappler homepage. You'll see links to the different live updates pages. Again, from Makati, we have the meeting the Avance of Vice President Leni Robredo. In Parañaque, that's the Uniteam Alliance meeting the Avance of Bongbong Marcos Jr. and Sara Duterte. In General Santos City, soon we'll have the meeting the Avance of Senator Manny Pacquiao, and in Tondo, Manila is the meeting de Avance of Isko Moreno. And I think that brings to a close tonight's live coverage. We'd like to thank our panelists, Inday Verona, Sofia, thank you. Gigi, who's still on the line, thank you, Gigi, for joining us. Julay Tehanki, and our campaign reporters who were able to dial in. And even those na hindi nakadial in, alam kong hirap na hirap kayo ngayon pag-cover ng mga meeting de Avance in Manila and beyond. Thank you for joining us. This brings to a close our coverage of the 2022 meeting de Avances. We're down to the last 2 days before the May 9 polls. Tune in to Rappler's special coverage of the 2022 elections. Again, if you want to watch the meeting de Avances of the different candidates, go to Rappler. Makikita mo from the homepage. You can navigate from there. If you want to watch all of the meeting de Avances or you want to get updates from all of the meeting de Avances, go ahead and do that. You can select from whoever you want to follow tonight. Again, we're down to the last 2 days. For more information, browse the Rappler homepage. Marami na tayong nakalagay doon bukod sa mga platform ng mga kandidato. May mga summaries na din tayo. Kung gusto mo ng survey performances of the different candidates in the past few months, you'll see that there. Again, thank you for joining me, ladies, tonight. Makikita-kita pa tayo in the coming days up until Election Day. I'm Bea Copin. Thank you for watching.
Tutuloy natin ang laban. Magandang simula ito. Number 2 sa balota.